Hello everyone, so we continue with our build of the Skyhawk today, and we're making actually quite some progress here. This is our current build. I'm quite pleased with it. Yesterday evening, oh sorry, let me switch to my proper OBS scene here. This is the Skyhawk, and well, we're making quite some progress. I've also optimized the fuselage just a tiny bit, the tip that I mentioned in the last stream. I've also found, this is a screenshot that I made yesterday, that the dihedral angle of the left wing was still a little bit off, apparently, so I wasn't really properly zoomed in, I guess. So I've really spent some, I guess 30 minutes or so just to make it perfect, and I think it currently is. So I'm quite pleased with that. Also, I already fixed the fuselage. If you look here at the wings, it now much more closely, it's always hard to see here in terms of perspective, but as you can see here are the wings, and this is the fuselage at the top of the cabin, and you can see it's really nicely aligned with those wings. So that's pretty. Today we're going to work with AirfoilMaker, figure that one out. I'm totally new to AirfoilMaker, because I think we also need to optimize the particular wing shape, the airfoil of the Skyhawk, and perhaps even, like the default 172 is doing, a different airfoil for the root of the wing and the tip of the wing, or section, I mean. And that might obviously then change the airfoil, the shape of the wings, and then we might also need to refine the cabin just to make it nicely, to make it fitting. So that's general the idea for what we're going to do today. What I'm also very pleased of is that Rush will be on stream most likely today by AeroSimGaming. And as I already told you guys a couple of streams ago, he is quite experienced with making aircraft for X-Plane himself. The Super Cup, also in collaboration with SimCoders and some other people who are really good at 3D modeling and stuff. I've also seen many streams of his where he is doing all kinds of evaluations of already existing aircrafts in X-Plane and assessing the flight model with the performance tables and optimizing those aircraft so that they fly much more realistically, which is really cool to see, but still something that I'm quite unfamiliar with. So I asked him if he could just drop by here on stream to tell us, and we can ask him questions about the general process or systematic to doing proper test flights. I mean, we're not just ready just yet for doing test flights with our Skyhawk, but just in preparation for that stuff, it would be wonderful if you could just give us some pointers or a general guide on how to do that. Because I guess just taking off and having some sense of whether it can roll or pitch up and that stuff, I mean, obviously it will fly, but I would really like to learn also how to really properly, thoroughly assess whether it's actually flying like a Skyhawk 172S, and how to do that. I mean, that's something that I'm really interested in. So hopefully we'll join today on Discord anytime between now and the next 3 hours or so, and we can ask him all kinds of questions about that, and perhaps also some other related questions about 3D modeling and stuff. So that's really great. Let me turn on some music. Let's get going. Yeah, so I optimized the fuselage, so I can remove that one. So I'd like to ask Rush about the airfoil, the washout that we were working on in the previous streams. So this stuff, because I put this in Photoshop, and you can see I've just added 2 lines here. One is the wing chord, or approximately the wing chord, and also the flat surface, which is not really that flat, at the bottom of the wing. Now, we have inferred the angle of incidence based off of these bolts, right, with the different angles. And as Oak also already suggested, and what also was a flag from my perspective, is that perhaps that angle those angles that we calculated should actually be corrected for the wing chord, because I think that the angle of incidence is actually the angle between the wing chord and the longitudinal axis of the aircraft. It's not the flat surface underneath. So I'd like to ask Rush about that as well. I did find some other manual, by the way. Where was it? Oh yeah, it was the angles PDF they've already been looking at for several streams by now. Where is it? We've got an S somewhere. 172Q. Let me see. Because I found... Or was it the other one? I don't know. Perhaps it's not this manual. Let me just see. Yeah, it's the S. No, these were just the... Hey, thanks for the follow, QQ. Thank you. I don't think that this is actually the manual that I was looking at. It was some other thing. Performance assessment. I think it's this one. By John McIver. Yeah, this is it. The NECA 2412 wing section. This is for the 172, and again, this is the only source reference that I found. Jane's All the World's Aircraft. That's a book, actually quite an expensive book. I think the PDF is also available online, where all of the aircraft in the world to date, well, this is a dated one, as you can see, I guess are described or... Yeah, described. And apparently from that book, John found out about these level of incidences. You can see a 1 degree and 44 minutes of a dihedral, which we can convert to just degrees. And also the incidence. As you look, 1 degree and 30 minutes incidence at the wing root and 1 degree 30 minutes incidence at the tip. Now, we know already that the wing washout doesn't happen over the entire wing. It only starts at the end of the strut to the wingtip. So this is a little bit of a general misguiding, actually, piece of information. However, I am interested in this angle of incidence and to compare to ours based off of this stuff that we did with the structural repair model of the 172. And it's a bit off. Let me see what it already was. Let me convert that. That's 1 degree, 30 minutes, 0 seconds then. Convert. That's 1.5. 1.5 degrees. And as you can see at the top of the wing, it will be minus 1.5 degrees. We are at 1.94 at the root and minus 1.32 or something like that at the wing tip. Again, based off of the structural repair model. Again, I trust this one a little bit more because it's from a manual, but at the same time though, this issue between the chord line and the flat, perhaps that makes up that difference. So in our case, we have 1.94 as a angle of incidence. Based off of this information from Jane's All the World's Aircraft, we do not know where she got her sources or information from. That's 1.5, so perhaps a 0.42 degree difference in angle of incidence might be, but that seems much too less, might explain this particular angle. But I guess that's not true. I also think that our angle of incidence, the 1.94, is a little bit too... I would expect to see a much more rounded off number, like 1.5, to be used in the Cessna Skyhawk rather than 1.94 or something like that. So again, a question for Rush, I guess. Hey, Giselle, it's good to see you. How are you doing, man? Happy New Year, still. to ask him whether this is right, because perhaps, I mean, it's a nice approach to infer those angle of incidences, but perhaps it's not correct what we're doing. All right. Yeah, so today, again, the flaps, elevators, rudders 1 or 2. So again, as I mentioned also in the last stream, we can assign our wings two different kinds of ailerons, you could say. As you can see, there are two options. You've got an aileron 1 and 2, and I initially thought it was for the first wing and the second wing, but that's not true. We're now looking at one particular wing section. As you can see, that one, and that particular wing section can either have an aileron 1 or an aileron 2 or a spoiler or an elevator or whatever we like. So we set it to 2. Now I thought that I read something about that the first one, for example, the flaps, is an outboard flap. So at the far end of the wingtip kind of flap, while the number 2 is for an inboard. It's actually closer to the cabin kind of flap. And that the same goes for the rudders and all of that stuff. So based off of that, I assigned my wing sections, the wings, but also the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer, a particular rudder or flap based off of these numbers, 1 or 2. Which seemed okay, but then I loaded up the default 172, and there they only use the number 1 for all of the different control surfaces. Now, it might be that it doesn't make any difference, but it can also be that it does make a difference, and I'm not sure what to use. So I think I'm going to, again, these are more refinements. I mean, we've got our basic aircraft model here that I'm quite pleased of, actually. But to have a look at the PlaneMaker manual to be sure that we're doing it right. Otherwise, we might do our test flights and are going to manipulate all kinds of other variables. Well, actually, all of those things have to do with the fact that we didn't assign the right kind of flap or aileron. Yeah, so let's have a look. PlaneMaker manual. I think it was there, but I'm not sure. So let's just search for inboard. Nope. PlaneMaker. Inboard. Outboard. Aileron. Flaps on the inboard part of the wing and flaps on the outboard wing. This is from the forums. Hey, that sounds like Discord. Or something else, I'm not sure what that was. Perhaps it's just the explain.org website. It's not Discord. I have no idea what where that sound came from. I think the website. Control surfaces. Inboard. Flaps on the inboard part of the wing and flaperons on the outboard wing. Yeah, but that's not what I was looking for. What are the main functions of inboard ailerons? That's a good question. Oh yeah, we found it on through Google Images actually. A lot of jets will have both inboard and outboard ailerons. Yes, I know. Some have multiple tabs on horizontal. Yeah, because of the difference in control efficiency at low speeds. Typically, both ailerons will work simultaneously. Makes sense. At high speed, just the inboards will work. Yes. So that might suggest that at a higher speed, perhaps, and I don't know what the speed is, perhaps it's relative to the numbers that we put into PlaneMaker, considering our Skyhawk's flight model, that as soon as we gain speed, for example, we go faster than our cruise speed, that our ailerons are automatically less effective, made less effective by PlaneMaker because we assign them as outboard ailerons that have that function. Same process using jets. Yeah, I get the general idea. Hey, Vanish, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, and there are also pictures here that show what we're doing. I can also have a bigger picture so you guys can see also a little bit more clearly what I'm referring to. Yeah, so here, inboard ailerons. So closer to the cabin, I guess, and these are the outboard ailerons. I have to say that I feel that I need to just follow along with what Laminar is doing with the default 172. So that we have actually have assigned the wrong type of flap or aileron to our wing section. Hey, Miwebs, Tim is clearly hooked. Yeah, I'm clearly hooked. I told you last week that I will still do some IFR flights during my holiday break, but it's really interesting, Vanish. It's interesting. And we're making progress as well, so I'm just following my bliss. Yes, so I know what outboard and inboard means, but I do like to see it in reference to PlaneMaker, actually. So let's search once more. PlaneMaker, inboard, outboard, aileron, inboard, outboards. I don't care. Inboard, outboards. Yeah, exactly, Janish. That's my feeling too. And also, you just develop a better understanding of why the Skyhawk looks like it does, and you also learn a bit about aerodynamics, which is also nice. And on top of that, we can make a Skyhawk that I would love to fly as well, and have some additional features that I would love to use as a serious student pilot in X-Plane, so that's cool. But I've already seen some other streams and videos of people flying on Pilot Edge, and I feel that I'm being pulled to some flights as well, so I know that I will fly very, very soon. But today, I will focus on PlaneMaker, and we have Rush. Rush will drop by AeroSimGaming to provide some pointers and guides on how to do proper test flights. And I can also ask him some other questions. For example, the wing washout and how we calculated that. And perhaps also this particular issue. Why don't we see any... Where did I find it? I would expect it to... to be described in PlaneMaker's manual. Inboard, outboard, outboard then? No. Flaps. Yeah. Let's see if we can find the menu. Yeah, this one. Exactly. 3.2. To do this, open the wing slider in the bottom half of wings. Yeah, the wing section will be divided into many pieces of equal size. That's what we did. These pieces serve several purposes. First, they represent the division of the wing, which anyone can calculate forces. For its simulation, the simulator works by breaking the wing into pieces. Yes, these pieces also serve as division across the for instance, we could run the first 4 pieces, and thus the first 4/9 of the wing section as a whole will have the flap 1 on them. Yeah, I can see flap 1. Likewise, the last 5 pieces, and thus the final lines are moving up, will have the aileron on them. Yes, I can see. but why 1 and not 2? This brings us to the next feature of the highlight orange is a single control surface. Flap 1 with the, we have set that the wings are broken into a number. Yes, the pieces are represented here, left to right, blah, 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 blah. This means in figure 1, the 4 pieces close to the fuselage have flap 1. From left to the root tip of the wing. Thus, when the checkbox on the far left is checked, it means the piece of the wing section that is closest to the fuselage has that control surface. Yes, so that would mean, that seems quite obvious actually. And that might mean that this is indeed weird because this is the first station. Yeah, and well, but that means that flap 1 therefore is just the inboard flap and not the other way around. Where did I read that? Check each of the boxes of the control system. Yep. You may be used to deciding how many pieces of the wing. Yes, we know, we already did. Speed breaker, and yeah, and then it's just skipped. It is just skipped. Wing design methods. Sounds good. Again, inboards. I'll zoom in the outboards. Yeah, also different. That's what we're going to do as well. Apparently this post also refers to using different airfoils for the root part of the ring and for the tip part. And the default 172 laminar is also doing that. And we're just using the exact same airfoil. This is not a post that is helpful to us. And I didn't read it in the... This indicates whether this part element of the wing is equipped with ailerons. Ailerons move differently on either wing to control roll. 2 sets of ailerons are provided so you can have inboard and outboard ailerons with different deflections. Oh, I think it doesn't really matter because we inputted the deflections here. Aileron 1 and aileron 2. With the flaps here as well. What's that sound? Blip, I've never heard that sound before. Or perhaps it's here. No. Don't know. No, it's not Discord. So my guess would be that PlaneMaker doesn't apply its own unique control surface behavior to either the aileron 1 or 2 or the rudder 1 or 2 or the elevator 1 and 2, but it just provides us with an option to set different control surfaces and angles or deflections for 2 sets of ailerons, and that's it. And we assigned ours the right deflections, and it doesn't really matter whether it's 1 or 2. In that case, I think it's more pretty to change them up. Although it even doesn't really matter that much, but I think it's more pretty just to use aileron 1, aileron 2, or aileron 1 as a whole. Minimap says the sound of the org notification. I thought so, thanks Mini. Lars, it's just someone has added an update on org you're looking at. Roger that, guys. I'm not familiar with that sound, so apparently that's it. So yeah, this is just purely aesthetic, so I'm just gonna switch everything over to number 1. Also because the default 172 is using that slot for all of its ailerons and things, so just to be sure. And because I think now what it doesn't do anything unique. It's just the fact that you have an additional aileron, and that's it. You can input what that aileron 1 or 2 or elevator 1 or 2 does here. So this one can go down. Yeah, flap roots, same thing. A slotted flap. I'm not sure. These are, again, I'm recognizing these acronyms because they're also shown in the AirfoilMaker app. I've already been a little bit of a prior study. And this is a lift coefficient, and this is a drag coefficient, and this is a momentum coefficient. Well, these two I kind of get, but momentum coefficient I don't quite get. But again, these numbers we can put in. Yeah, we should do the same here as well. 1. We can put in based off our test flight. 0. 0. Yes, that's changed. And the rudders too, we're going to do the same with that. 3, 7. 7, 4. Yes, let's put it all to 0. And we don't need to do anything else. Everything is set to the slot number 1. Elevators, flaps as well. Now, we don't see any flaps moving right now here because, yeah, we didn't assign those wings the proper. There it goes. And now we do see it turning. Okay, and the same for wing number 4, I think. Yeah, I see it highlighting. Yeah, 1. That's nice. The ailerons we already did, I think. That's number 2, and that will be number 5. Yes, and then we got the elevators. And let's do the exact same thing. We skipped the last station because the Skyhawk doesn't use elevators to the tip of the horizontal stabilizer, and the same should be done for the other. Interesting, we can have 2 here at the same time. Elevator 1, right? And this is the left wing. It has a slightly different sweep, also interesting. And that's it. Let's double check. I see flaps moving, I see elevators moving, and I don't see rudders moving. That's because it's in the wings section, and it's this one, yeah. This one goes up. This should be off. Yeah, double check, and it's moving. Save. Okay. Checked. So this one, we now know how that works. Elevator trim. Good one. And where's the elevator trim? Minnie, when is Rush coming on to speak? I'm sure show you the ways of the airfoil. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, again, I'm just so honored that he just allowed me to pick any time, and he could just drop by here on the stream. Obviously, we have a time zone difference, so I just said, well, I'm streaming from 1200 Zulu, which eventually was turned into 1300 Zulu, up to 1600 or so. And I said, well, drop by at any time you like. So I don't know when he's coming in exactly, but he said he was planning to drop by today. And man, we're going to ask him questions. I also suggested to him perhaps that he could just make a video, because then he can also do drawings and show us stuff, demonstrate stuff. Because now he needs to explain everything through chat, voice chat, which might perhaps become a little bit more difficult to convey information, but we'll have to see. Again, I'm really looking forward to him being on stream. Yes. Again, let me check Discord. Yeah, no, it's still idle. Yes, so the elevator trim, I think we already found where is it? It's in the wings section. No. So looking here at the rows here, I only see ailerons, rudders, elevators, and that's it. Where was it? Possum, thanks for the follow. Minnie, he loves drawing diagrams, what he talks about. Yeah, it makes it quite entertaining and engaging. But boy, he does get carried away when you get him going. Well, again, I really appreciate his enthusiasm, also his support of this project, and to share any knowledge and guides or pointers that he has. It's really fun. That's the Flight Sim community, guys. We're all helping one another. Or at least that's what it should be like. Again, elevator trim. I think I saw a tab somewhere. I would expect it to be somewhere near wings, but clearly that's not the case. Miscellaneous wings then. No, because we can just add different tabs there. Control geometry. There's it. There, yeah. Trim and speed. What do we have here? All moving stabilizer trim, trailing edge down, then up. We don't get a Hoover. Decrease surface deflection, elevator or stabilizer or stabilizer. Yes. Trim deflection for airplane. Sounds good. Aileron trim surface down then up. That's interesting. We don't have that stuff. And it's set to 5, but I guess it doesn't matter because we cannot change that in the cockpit with a 172. We also have no rudder trim. I think the 182 Skyline does have rudder trim. So we only have elevator trim, surface down then up. And what's this then? Elevator trim full deflection time. Seconds from center to either extreme. Interesting. Elevator trim time. That's actually interesting because I noticed for some airplanes, I don't know if it's the 170 or whether it's the full 172 of Laminar or the Airfoil Labs, that the trim speed was much too quick. And this is actually where we can change that up. That's cool. Elevator trim tab adjust. 0 is centered, full down, plus is full up. Elevator trim tab adjust. I guess it should just be a... And this is takeoff trim, ratio to max trim. This is the fraction of the total trim travel available that the trim will go to when the takeoff trim joystick button is hit. If you have a joystick button assigned to set the takeoff trim. Okay, apparently there is such a trim. That's not what we're going to use because you just need to set it manually. Okay, so the only thing that we need to trim deflection in helicopters, I think that's what is referred to by halos. And control deflection rates. Elevator aileron deflection time. Interesting. Nose wheel steering. times. Speed brakes we don't have, obviously. That's interesting. And again, this is stuff I think that SimCoders is manipulating as well through the Reality Extension Pack. So I think I'm also going to shoot Claudio an email, CEO of SimCoders, and ask him firstly about whether he would be ready to, at some point in the future, provide rep for our Skyhawk as well. And if so, if I should bother myself getting all these numbers right, or he said, no, that's what we do. Just make it as basic as possible, and we just connect it to Reality Extension Pack, and that's it. Still, though, I would love to learn how to tinker and set these numbers right. And again, this is why Rush comes over as well, so we can ask him some questions about that. The approach, the general systematic to getting those numbers right. Because again, I expect that when we're going to fly the Skyhawk, we still need to put in a lot of numbers. But once we get there, that there are so many interrelated variables that it's hard for me to notice what variables are off and therefore what variables we need to reset. So for example, in a bank, it might be we might be rolling too quickly. Well, that might be because we need to adjust some number here because of the aileron is too, the deflection is going down too quickly, or perhaps it's because our airframe is not right, or perhaps it's because our engine is, whatever it may be. So how can we infer again from particular flight performance what variables are off? And I guess that's the hardest thing, and would probably also take quite some time to get right. Also the whole process of then changing something up and then noticing with another kind of flight maneuver that then that maneuver is off because you just reset something, and we need to go back and forth and stuff, and I like to be as efficient and as effective as possible. So yeah. Anyways, control surface then up. So these are degrees. Well, that's something that I think we can look up. For example, here with my angles PDF that we were looking at just a while ago. That's the 172R. So let's go down to the S. Should be generally the same though, I think. 172S. Maneuver speed, blah, blah, blah. Ailerons, elevator tab. Up, 22 degrees or plus or minus 1. Well, with all of the other angles here, we always use the first one, so let's do that as well. Elevator tab 22, and that's up, right? Yeah, up. 22. 22. Oh, down then up. So this is down, that is up. Okay. 2. And it was down 19 apparently. Done. Elevator trim time, full deflection time. I have no idea. I guess that's also not something that is described here in the manual. And that will therefore be something that we need to look at separately in the sim. 20 seconds. This is the total time taken for the trim to go from center to either extreme. Yeah. What is this? All moving stabilizer trim, trailing edge down, then up. All moving stabilizer trim, trailing edge. No hover. What is that about? Do we actually see a stabilizer or a elevator trim? I think not.
That's cool.
I don't see any. And we only have an elevator trim on the right side here. I think we cannot set that either. It's just a virtual thing, I guess, the stabilizer. Oh man, there's so much stuff that we still need to figure out. It's awesome. Yeah, what's that top thing about? All moving, stabilizer trim, trailing edge down, trailing edge down. But that's just Is that the default trim or what? All moving stabilizer trim trailing edge. So the trailing edge is the last bit, I guess, where you would expect the trim tab to be. All moving stabilizer trim trailing edge. Okay, that edge. What is that edge? And this one is degrees surface deflection, elevator or stabulator or stabilizer. But apparently there's also something like a stabulator. It's degrees surface deflection. No idea. Again, this is something that we would find out about more when we're just gonna fly it and move the trim and see that it doesn't work like we want it, and we need to figure it out by trial and error and then discover what this thing is all about. The same with these elevator deflection. Okay, I think for now we just set it. We got the right deflection, so that's the best I can do for now. AirfoilMaker. Yeah, and optimize the tip of the fuselage. We also already did, or I did. Meanwhile, so again, top. What I did was changing these up just a tiny bit here to make them fit the top picture. And actually, we've got quite a good flight model. Really proud of that. I am proud. Took some time though, but there we are. Save. Understood. Hide. Let's go to AirfoilMaker. Now here it is. So PlaneMaker, AirfoilMaker. Boom. This is what you see when you load it up. Or at least that's not entirely true because I already loaded up the right airfoil. Really minimal menu options here. So you open and you see X-Plane 11 folder. You see aircraft and you see airfoils. So you can also, some aircraft have their own airfoils. Also the default 172. It's based off of this NECA 2412 that we see in all the manuals, mentioned in all the manuals. But apparently they did some tweaking, which I'm interested in to do myself as well. Without copy pasting what Laminar is doing, because so far they are sometimes a bit off, as though it seems for now. Hey, SN, good to see you. So what I did was just load up the 2412 popular that we also assigned to all of our wing sections, and this is what we see. This is AirfoilMaker. And what you see here, and this is just again a general kind of, there's also an AirfoilMaker manual that we should go through actually. I just scanned through it. AirfoilMaker manual. It's pretty much the same as our PlaneMaker manual. So it's just a side, one big page. Yeah, and it kind of resembles. Now, what I know is we got three lines here, three major lines, curves that each have their own unique color. A red one, yellow one, and a green one. And you see that if I can move my mouse here and I can move this line, and this wide angle, the x-axis, so the horizontal axis here, shows you actually the angle of attack. And the technical term there that I've also heard Rush mention many times during his test flights is alpha. There's an alpha and a beta kind of angle. The alpha, you can also see here in the bottom, that's the angle of attack. So when I go to the left here, we got a minus 20 degrees angle of attack. So that's the relative angle of the chord of the wing to the wing, to the wind, relative wind direction. And based off of that angle of attack, we can see how this particular airfoil performs. And that performance is then divided or described in terms of three different, well, dimensions. those are the three lines. The first one is the green one. That is CL, that I already mentioned before when we were looking at the flaps in PlaneMaker. CL stands for, I don't know what the C is for, but this is lift. So this is some kind of lift coefficient. So with an angle of attack of minus 14.89 degrees, we got the least, the wing, this particular airfoil generates the least amount of lift. Actually, it's not even least, it's even a negative lift. It pulls down the, if I understand it correctly, it pulls down the aircraft. Not sure if I should interpret that as well. What are these vertical? What is this vertical axis stands for? Again, we need to look that up in the manual here, and I think Rush will tell us about this as well. And the max lift is here, and that's an angle of attack alpha of 15 degrees. Now the red one, it's also good that it's red, makes sense, is drag. CD, drag. So with that same angle of attack of 15 degrees, we also got a significant drag component. Makes sense when we have a steep angle of attack there. So there's some kind of optimum here, and I would say somewhere around here, when we have the least drag and the, I don't know, just a guess, least drag and max lift, and that would be somewhere around 8 degrees of a angle of attack. And usually the Skyhawk is not really exactly level, I think. So again, this might interplay with an optimum cruise speed and all kinds of other stuff. It's quite an interrelated kind of model way of thinking, which I'm completely new to, but I'm really excited about. When is Rush joining? I do not quite know, but he said he's going to join today, and I just gave him a time window of an hour ago up to 1600, 1700 Zulu, and said to him, join at any moment you like. So I have no idea when he exactly is going to drop by. Yeah. So far, my knowledge. So we see a lot of different numbers here. Lift power and stuff that we can change, and it changes these numbers. So for example, lift power 2.0, no idea what it is. Tune this number so the lift curve transitions smoothly into the stall. Apparently that's what it does. So there's a more instant stall behavior, and this is a much more smooth one. Drag is the same. We got a drag minimum that we can increase. Whoa. So we can change all of these curves. And again, you see also some more grayed out versions of that red drag curve. Same goes with the lift curve. Momentum, that's the yellow one. I have no idea what that means. Momentum. It's a term in physics, but what it means in terms of flight behavior, I have no idea. So generally, my first impression is, okay, I get these two different, got red and green, I get that. Yellow, I don't. And I would guess that we need to look up pictures of the root and the tip chunk of our wings, of the Skyhawk 172S, and just mimic them. We just need to tweak these numbers so that it represents the same kind of graphical presentation as it looks from the manuals. I think it's about that. If we cannot find such graphs, and I think I've already saw a few sites about that. Airfoil calculator. Yeah, this thing. No, well, I thought it was this one, but it's actually not. I've seen these kinds of pictures before. I don't know what the technical term is. Airfoil coefficient thingy. We might be able to find one of those for the Skyhawk 172, and then it becomes quite easy. If we cannot find that information because it's secret or proprietary or some kind of, well, not accessible for us, then we need to do test flights and need to tweak these numbers, and not just once, but for the different wing sections in order to approximate the realistic flight performance of our 172. Now, if that's the case, and I'm suspecting that Rush is going to tell me that this whole testing flight is not just such a small chunk here in our progress bar here on top, as you can see with the turquoise, but it's actually a much more extended period of time, well, actually relative to our PlaneMaker. We've been already spent a few days on PlaneMaker, so this would also stand for a day or so at least. We actually need quite some time to optimize our flight model. So before we're going to do that, I'm also going to, again, email SimCoders to say, guys, is it necessary for us to do this? Because perhaps SimCoders has already the right information. Perhaps SimCoders or the Reality Extension Pack manipulates the airfoil of the default 172 to make it more realistic, and then SimCoders might say, oh, Tim, don't bother with this stuff. We already have this data, and we can just append it, we can just project it on your Skyhawk, and it will fly in the exact same way. I don't know. But anyway, that's the task. Our current task, airfoils. And the same we need to do with the vertical stabilizer, perhaps. I mean, oh yeah, here you can also see the section. This is interesting. So this is kind of like what PlaneMaker is doing. So we can change the airfoil, and this is also how the airfoil then will change when we load it up in PlaneMaker, and why we need to adjust our fuselage so that it follows the same contour. So this is the chord line exactly. Okay. Wing LD, I have no idea. It looks beautiful. Again, I can think the same kind of measures, lift, drag, LD, no clue. And we also, that's also some question that I have, the Reynolds number. There's a Reynolds value. We've been looking at that as well, also with the PlaneMaker. So when we go into, there's also an airfoil menu, or yeah, menu here in PlaneMaker, where we can assign different wing sections a particular airfoil. And we just messed around with that just based on thickness so far, and the NACA 2412, because we know that that airfoil is used in the Skyhawk 172 series. But apparently, as you can see, we got multiple for one wing section. For example, wing section 6, we have 4 different options, places or options to set a particular airfoil, and it's partly based off of low and high Reynolds number that I don't quite get yet. So complexity is introduced. More complexity is introduced when we now venture into working with AirfoilMaker. And I guess AirfoilMaker likes to know what the behavior is of the airfoil under different Reynolds numbers. This is 0.10 million, I think. These are high numbers. LD estimation. I would love to see a hover over here, but unfortunately we don't have any. Angle of attack, I guess, AOA 180, angle of attack 20. So this is the usual, more familiar one, and this is the 180. So I guess this has to do with high speed or with turbulence or something chaotic. Man, I have no idea. Okay. So, and this is a section, yeah. So, and we also, for these different top tabs, we also got those same Reynolds numbers, apparently. So that's generally what AirfoilMaker looks like. And very generally what we should tinker with. And I don't know the approach of how to approximate our wingfoil for the 172, but that's basically it. Now, I think a good start until Rush joins, and if he joins, but I'm hoping he does. We can go through the AirfoilMaker manual together. Designing an airfoil. Every airfoil ever designed has its own specific characteristics, which are its coefficients of how much airfoil wants to lift up, pull back or drag, and how much the airfoil wants to pitch up. Dominating the design screen is a large black graph with red and yellow lines. Yes, we already seen that, and we got that thing. I already read about this. The left edge of the graph corresponds to an angle of attack of 120, and this is plus 20, so this is angle of attack. And based off that different angle of attacks, we got different behavior of the airfoil. Reynolds number. Oh, I guess the C just stands for coefficient. Coefficient of lift. Coefficient of lift. Coefficient of drag, obviously. Reynolds number. In the upper left of the screen is a number and labeled RE for Reynolds number, as highlighted in figure 10. Reynolds number. The Reynolds number is simply the air density times the speed of the airplane times the chord of the wing divided by the viscosity of air. Whoa. All right. Yeah, so it makes sense that the air behaves differently based on how dense the air is, how fast it travels along the wing, the airfoil, and also based on how wide that chord is. So it kind of makes sense. And the viscosity, what does viscosity already mean? Viscosity. Viscosity. The viscosity of a fluid is a measure of its resistance to gradual deformation by shear stress or tensile stress. Viscosity. Okay. So I guess how rigid or the air is, something like that, or how fluid. Experiments have shown that a wing's coefficients of lift, drag, and moment vary somewhat. Yeah, what's moment? The green line is the coefficient of lift, the red line, the yellow line is the coefficient of moment, called Cm in the coefficient. We'll look at the behavior of each of these lines below. Okay. For highest realism, users can generate two different airfoil files for the same airfoil in AirfoilMaker. Users can generate two different airfoil files for the same airfoil in... yes, that's the low and high number that we saw in PlaneMaker, I think. Each file had a different Reynolds number and assign them both to a wing in PlaneMaker. Yes. X-Plane will figure out the Reynolds number on each piece of the plane at least 10 times per second. Wow. And interpolate between the two airfoil files to give the most realistic coefficient for that flight Reynolds number. Yes, so while we are flying, just to get this straight. So we are flying, we're taking off, we're climbing, we're descending, we're going through different air masses, virtually, obviously. And that changes the Reynolds number because it's based on air density, it's based off our speed, it's based on, and that obviously then affects how our particular wing section airfoil behaves. So that is what, yeah. So that also makes sense that why AirfoilMaker and the particular airfoil that we load up or append to our Skyhawk or our airplane makes a significant difference in how our plane behaves. So based off of that, I think chances are that when we're going to do our test flights, we are not going to tinker with how the fuselage looks like, or we're not going to do anything about the 3D model. We're only going to mess around with the measures, with the numbers, And most particularly, I guess, AirfoilMaker, but I'm not sure about that. So interesting, so complex. Yes, pilots should realize that very good accuracy can be obtained without touching the Reynolds number at all. And without generating two airfoil files for each airfoil. Most users can ignore the above paragraph and the Reynolds number slot in the airfoil generation screen without sacrificing a good simulation. Yes, but I'm curious. In this section, we also have the thickness ratio and the drag divergence Mach number. Thickness only affects the visual appearance of the wing when it's shown in PlaneMaker and explained. The thickness ratio is an important characteristic of the airfoil, so it's usually easy to find in the airfoil data. Or even in the airfoil name. NECA 2412 has a thickness of 12%, so you would enter 140. Oh, okay. Okay. Drag div Mach is the airspeed. And again, they are referring to this picture. So we got Reynolds number, thickness, and drag div Mach. So if I loaded up the airfoil 2412. So I would expect to see oh, that's interesting. So apparently this manual is a bit dated, I guess, because we have different Reynolds number sections. That's interesting. Perhaps that's an upgrade from X-Plane 10 to 11, which to me suggests that indeed X-Plane 11 has a much more, potentially more sophisticated airfoil dynamic going on, because it allows at least AirfoilMaker designers, airfoil makers, us, an opportunity to be much more precise for different Reynolds numbers. Interesting. Okay. Is the airspeed when drag starts to increase dramatically? Drag div Mach, but I don't see it here. I only see all kinds of other numbers. Am I looking at the right stuff? Yeah, it's just consistent. One. No. Wing LD. Nope. Section also no. Okay, so that particular drag Mach thing is not anymore, I guess. I'm looking. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Yeah. Coefficients. Yeah. Coefficient of lift, the green line. Yeah. Notice that at 0 degrees of an angle of attack, 0 here. The coefficient of lift is fairly low. No, that's not what I'm doing, right? This is not where it's 0. 0 is just 0. Just looking at the alpha here. So 0 would be somewhere around here. And you can see then that for the green stuff, it's relatively low. Why is this y-axis shown in red? It suggests to me that now the I-axis, there are different I-axes to be enabled, and now we look at the one that is associated with the coefficient of drag rather than the one of lift. I thought I saw this in green as well earlier. Notice that at 0 degrees, yeah, so 0 degrees I guess is here. That the green is just, yeah, a little bit of lift. It is close to the thin white line that represents 0. As the angle increases, the coefficient of lift increases right along with it. Yeah, we increase the angle of attack and the lift increases as well. Until it reaches around 16 degrees angle of attack, at which point the coefficient of lift falls abruptly. Yeah, that's here. And that should be the stall, I guess. That represents the stall. Hey Tim, it's been a long time since I've joined. Yeah, I know. Interesting to see you making an airfoil as I'm studying aerodynamics right now. That's very cool, man. yeah, so I'm totally new. I had physics and maths and stuff, advanced maths and science things in my secondary school, high school. But then I ventured into educational psychology and instructional design and stuff. So I'm a little bit unfamiliar with this stuff since, but I'm really, really interested. So if you have any tips or you hear me rambling about stuff that I don't get, please share your knowledge. So we can create a interesting Skyhawk here and a realistic Skyhawk. This represents the stall. Looking at the negative angles of attack, so that's this side, the left side here, the airfoil stalls then 2. Yes, that's true. That's this entire chunk. So this is a stall, these negative values. No, that's not true, because here it stalls as well. So stall is not associated with whether these are plus or minus numbers. You just see a drop of lift. If you go to a large enough negative angle of attack... Oh, no, wait. If you go to a large enough negative angle of attack, the airfoil stalls then 2. So that's this little nip. Yeah, so what is stall then? Stall is an abrupt, significant change in whatever the y-axis shows. I mean, we're going down here. We're also going down here, but I guess this is not what you're gonna go. What you're gonna call a stall. This bit is only the stall, I guess. And here with a negative, that's also interesting, by the way. So we have a negative. Let me get my. Can I get this out? No, I've got a Cessna 172 beautiful desk model here. I thought I could just get my Cessna off of the stand, but apparently it is glued. Luckily, it's glued quite tightly there. It would be cool though if we could have a model of a Skyhawk here, so we can just illustrate what we're saying. So we're flying with the Skyhawk. We have a negative angle of attack. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going up or pointed down, or it's just the relative angle of our longitudinal axis of the wing of the aircraft. This is the aircraft to the wind, and this is the wind. So angle of attack is 0. If the wind should go down like this, then we already have a negative angle of attack. Now this is a weird kind of situation, so most likely this will stay straight and we are going down. And apparently there is an angle of attack. Yeah, it should make sense though. An angle of attack where we are so steep going down that we stall. But again, if our airspeed increases, we're going down quite quickly, we would not stall, because that's the whole Reynolds number. But that's interesting. Negative angle of attack. Usually we're at positive angle of attack, so obviously with flaps on and we're flying like this and the wind is coming like this. And then the wind is not sticking to the topmost part of the airfoil, and so it just bounces off almost, and we don't create that high and low pressure kind of dynamic, and we just lose lift, and so we drop down like a stone. But as we're going down like this, you can also say that the wind is hitting. It's so steep hitting on the wings that there is not enough wind going underneath the wing, and that's also disruptive to that low high pressure. I think it's something like that. Again, new. I'm just trying to figure this out, guys. Yeah, it's possible to stall upside down. Well, upside down. Are we upside down with a negative angle of attack? This is a little bit confusing, but I think I was right with that example. A good wing will have a decent coefficient of lift, maybe 0.4. At angle of attack close to 0, will have a decent coefficient of lift at angle of attack 0. And a nice high coefficient of lift, maybe 1.6, at the maximum angle of attack. And the maximum angle of attack would then be this line, right? Until we stall. A safe airfoil will also have a stall that is not too abrupt. A stall that is not too abrupt. So we can see here, this is the stall. You can see that the lift coefficient evens out, but it's getting less steep. So the stall slowly happens. Yeah. A safe air will also have a stall that is not too abrupt. Yeah, so we can hear the stall horn and we can change our added angle of attack and save ourselves from death. Martin, you're upside down with an air angle of attack of point. Yeah, exactly, with minus 91 degrees. Thank you, Martin. Yeah, so with minus 16 degrees, we're just minus 16 degrees. But then we go down and down and now we're at minus 90. And so minus 91, then we're upside down. But here we are at at an alpha of minus 15. When we would already stall. That's weird. Well, I think it's not weird in that example that I just try to develop. I can imagine that it could stall, but I think you need to do two things, because if you're speeding, obviously when you go down like that. No, but I'm confusing two things. It's the angle of the longitudinal axis of the aircraft to the relative wind. This is how that negative angle stall happens. But if we're going down fast, then the relative wind is going to be leveled again with our longitudinal axis, because we're going that fast that wind does go underneath and above the wing airfoil, and there's no problem. Yeah. So if we go very slow, airspeed wise, and the wind would hit in a negative angle, then we're in trouble. Yeah, I guess so. But how many times does that happen? But theoretically, it's interesting to wrap my mind around that. All right, get it. Coefficient of drag. The red line is coefficient of drag. We know. Notice that the coefficient of drag is lowest close to 0 degrees of angle of attack. Notice that the coefficient of drag is lowest close to 0 angles of attack. Yes. 0 angles of attack, alpha of 0. Flat. Yes, and I guess that would make sense also as an aircraft designer, because usually you're flying at around an angle of attack of 0, not entirely, but so obviously you design your aircraft so that it shows the least amount of drag here, so you can go as fast as you like. Hip hop. We did not listen to that music station just before, I think. I don't know. Does sound familiar. Notice that the drag gets higher and higher as the wing goes to a larger and larger angle of attack, or negative larger, more extreme angle of attack. Yes, because the wind is hitting the either flat surface. That is not surprising, is it? No. I like these sentences. They really complement what I was thinking as well. The higher the angle the wing is offset from the airflow, the greater the drag. Yes. It doesn't matter much whether the wing moves to positive or negative. Exactly. That is whether the wing is aimed up or down. Therefore, it's not just greater angles of attack, but just extremer. Moving the wing away from its most streamlined position increases its drag. Yes, a good airfoil will obviously have the lowest drag. Yes. Notice that this drag coefficient does not include the drag due to the production of lift. Notice that this drag coefficient does not include the drag due to... So how is that? Is that parasitic? Para something lift? So apparently, with proper aerodynamic theory, knowledge, understanding, also the generation of lift creates drag. That I don't get. I mean, I get the airfoil shape, and that if wind is coming from this direction, I should use that tool, even though I don't like it that much. But can we draw? Yes. Rush style. So wind is coming in. It hits, obviously, this surface, which creates drag, but that's not what they're referring to here. Notice that this drag coefficient does not include the drag due to the production of lift. I mean, wind is going faster over it than underneath it, so that means that this will get a low pressure, high pressure. This one wants to go up, and because it goes up, it pushes the wing up, or it pulls the wing up, either way. But it also means that wind tries to get to the lower pressure by wrapping itself over the wingtip to the top. That's where the wake turbulence thing comes. Those vortices, and those also have drag. That's why you've got airplanes with winglets and stuff to prevent that wake turbulence stuff. But I don't know if they refer to that kind of drag. Martin, I'd assume the turbulence you create with the lift of the wing also adds some drag. Yes. So turbulence here on this, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm just, again, skip, let's move on. I don't care. I do care, but I care enough. Coefficient of moment. Yeah, what's that about? The coefficient of moment, so that's the yellow line stuff here. The coefficient, meanwhile, Rush is still idle. He's still sleeping, I guess. The man just said to me, pick any UTC time and I will be there. That's support. My gosh. Again, I don't mind him not being on stream today. I would love him to have him on stream, but I think he's still sleeping. The coefficient of moment is the tendency of the wing to pitch up about its axis. The coefficient of moment is the tendency of the wing to pitch up about its axis, or rotate upwards about the spar. Most wings actually want to pitch down, so the coefficient of moment usually is negative. We see that as well. The moment varies a bit with angle of attack, often in ways that are a little bit surprising. Typically the moment will be negative for all normal encountered angles of attack. Exactly. These are extreme stuff here to the left, to the right. Especially as the angle of attack is increased. Exactly. Extremes. This continues until the stall, at which point the moment heads back to zero. Well, here it does. Here it kind of does. Yeah, this continues until the stall point. A desirable characteristic of an airfoil is usually to have a low coefficient of moment. Tendency of the wing to pitch up about its axis or rotate upwards about the spar. No idea what that means. Most wings actually want to pitch down. They want to pitch down, and I guess that's again because of the airfoil and the wing. Yeah, so it goes like this, and or perhaps it's not because of the airfoil itself. Well, it must be. Thought it was perhaps related to the cord, but Chord is always straight. Angle of attack, chord, and relative wind. I don't know how to explain that, but apparently wings want to roll down. Okay. Some moment. This is a weird. Okay. General information. I like general information. Finding coefficients. Yes, many users wonder how to find what the coefficients are. Exactly, Laminar. Many users wonder how to find what the coefficients are for the airfoils of their own airplane. To do this, the user must first find what airfoil the aircraft uses. We know already, 2412. Probably from the manufacturer. Then check to see if that airfoil is included with X-Plane. It is. If a user is flying a Cessna 182, for example, the airfoil uses the NECA 2412 airfoil. Exactly, which is included. Cessna 182 owners then do not need to generate their own airfoil for that wing. Users who do not know what airfoil to use should leave them as defaults of airplane. But ho! The Skyhawk is using the 24.2 NECA as well. However, you're not going to trap me, Laminar, because I know... Let me save our Skyhawk here. Let's just load it up. Default 172. 172. Yes, open aircraft. You guys have made a altered airfoil of the 2412. You guys made a root version and a tip version. Root, tip, root. Wing number wing 2. I don't know what wing 2 is. Yes, no, it perhaps works like this, that this is the root. Yeah, so I think that wing 1 is just that first chunk of the wing, which is quite rectangular and the same. Also no wing washout and stuff as we've seen, so that's just a basic chunk of persistent airfoil. So they're calling that root. Then if we move on to the second wing section, and obviously that second wing section starts from that same first root. So it starts with the same root again, but then moves on to the wing tip. It could be that Laminar is accounting for wing washout through this mechanism, root to tip. Because we know that AirfoilMaker averages out this root airfoil and that root airfoil, and everything in between is being divided equally, I guess, or changed up equally so it goes from root to that tip airfoil. However, the point is, this I'm not going to fall for. So indeed, NECA 2412, we know that's also for the Skyhawk. So actually the airplane manual says, just leave it, it's okay. But that's not what you guys are doing, guys. So we're going to continue. Airfoil selection is a fun and interesting process. I hope it is, because one looks for the best possible combination of lift, drag, and moment and characteristics of a particular airplane. For users that will be experimenting with their own airplane designs and are new to the matters discussed in the chapter, we highly recommend the following book to get started. Ooh, I love books. Theory of Wing Sections. An oldie but goodie. This book has the lift, drag, and moment plots of many airfoils in it, so the reader can choose their favorite airfoil for design and enter it into the computer using the link described. Yeah, but is it just an index, or is it also, yeah, basic of airfoil theory and nomenclature? I'm interested. Guys, I just like to paste it in the same edit, paste and match style. Thank you. Yes, but we're not gonna, well, we have to look it up. I hope we can look it up, that stuff, from the root and the tip of the airfoil. Martin, weird definition of fun. Well, it is fun. I think it's fun. And not just, I mean, and also it becomes fun. All of this stuff becomes fun. And the same is true for flight training as well, I think. It becomes fun when your object of your criterion for fun is not so much the product or the delivery of something, but it's the process. So a more process-oriented focus on what you're doing is usually more fun generating than just being solely focused on we need to create a Skyhawk as quickly as possible, because then this becomes quite tiring. But I can take weeks for this if I like to. I just like the process of understanding and learning about airfoils in this case, but perhaps it's just me. I like to be uncertified in a way. That's types of airfoils. Yeah, so in the following discussion, thin and symmetrical, thick and highly cambered, and normal generation avian airfoils will be discussed. These types of airfoils serve as a good introduction because they are so different from one another. Martin, well, it's interesting, don't get me wrong. Roger, I agree. Thin, symmetrical airfoils are thin and have the same shape on both the top and the bottom surface. Yeah, that's what's making them symmetrical. We are using symmetrical airfoils for the struts. I think also for the horizontal stabilizer, and so far also for the vertical stabilizer. The question is whether that's right. But for the horizontal, I think it would be, but perhaps we can also find data on that, and we can even tweak that and optimize that as well. Oh yeah, they produce very much lag. Yeah, they typically are used for vertical stabilizers and often horizontal stabilizers as well, because they are not called upon to produce a lot of lift. I mean, symmetrical also produces lift and are not expected to produce much drag either. Exactly. Use thick, high cambered airfoils in the foreplanes of canards or other applications where you want a large amount of lift from a small wing area. These foils are known for providing a large amount of drag as the penalty for providing a large amount of lift. Perhaps this is the thing that they were referring to on top here, that the lift also produces drag. It's just because when you increase... I need to find a better application for drawing on my screen than this freeware shiz. If we increase this curve, this should be more straight. Then wind that is coming in, I mean this entire wind column, you should say, likes to keep up with one another. That's the general tendency. So obviously there's an object now, and so this particular airflow needs to divide itself. It needs to choose whether to go down or up. And when it goes up, it needs to travel a longer distance than the guys that can just go straight on. And so in order to keep up, it needs to go faster. And because it goes faster, there's a low pressure and a high pressure. So obviously when you increase this first bubble, it needs to go even faster and it creates much more lift. But obviously the penalty for that is that this particular air column smashes into that frontal part of the wing because it's a bump. So obviously there's some kind of an optimum. Yes, so-called normal generation aviation airfoils, like the NECA 2412, seen in figure 10.5, yes, are comprises between the two and are good candidates for the wing of a general aviation aircraft. Yeah, so not too much of a bubble there, of a curve, initial curve, but there is some. And this will then be the curve, or the chord. Yeah. Supercritical, laminar flow. This was interesting. What does laminar mean actually? I mean, Laminar Research is the company that's making X-Plane, but I didn't know that, which just surprised me. But that laminar stands consisting of laminae. In fluid dynamics, laminar flow occurs when a fluid flows in parallel layers. Laminar flow. Yeah, that's what I was just drawing, I think. With no disruption between their layers. At low velocities, the fluid tends to flow without lateral mixing, and adjacent layers slide past one another like playing cards. Exactly. That's laminar. Okay, interesting. Non-turbulent. Yeah, Steve. Exactly. Thanks. Yeah. So far, so good, guys. Supercritical laminar flow. Supercritical. That's also a technical term, I think. Supercritical laminar flow and other possible groupings of airfoils exist. But for the purpose of our discussion, we will concentrate on the thin and symmetrical, thick and highly cambered, and normal generation airfoils. I think that's a great decision. Generating airfoils. Coefficient of lift intercept. Do we have that box then? I mean, clearly this is a dated manual of X-Plane. AirfoilMaker is a bit more sophisticated now, it seems. Intercept. Intercept. The lift intercept is the amount of lift the foil puts out at 0 degrees angle of attack. 0 alpha. This is the lift when the wing is aimed straight into the wind. Yes. And it's not pitched up at all. No, that's double. 0.20 is a typical value. Yes, so 0 angle of attack. We go up. And this is 0.012. To increase this number, you can click the right above digits that you want to increase and below the ones that you want to decrease. For example, the lift intercept on it. Yeah, I get that, guys. That's not that difficult. Just above 2, twice. Although you can click, I know. The coefficient of lift intercept. Double check Discord here if we're not gonna miss notifications by Rush. No, Rush is still idle and I think asleep. The coefficient of lift intercept is the coefficient of lift at an angle of 0 degrees. The coefficient of lift intercept is the coefficient of lift at an angle of 0 degrees. For a symmetrical airfoil, this will always be 0, since in such an airfoil, the airfoil is doing exactly the same. Yeah, on top and off the bottom of the wing at 0 degrees angle of attack. Exactly, that's why it's symmetrical. Symmetrical airfoils are sometimes used for horizontal stabilizers and almost always for vertical stabilizers. We know sleek, skinny wings with low camber might have a lift intercept of 0.1. Fat, highly cambered foils have a value around 0.6. Okay. A typical airfoil like the NACA 2412, commonly used in general aviation, has a value of about 0.2. Coefficient of lift slope. Man, already halfway through this manual. I think it doesn't gonna. We need Rush. That's the conclusion, I think. As the angle of attacks. Now, coefficient of lift slope. This is the increase in coefficient of lift per degree increase of angle of attack. Yeah, that makes sense as a measure. This is the increase in coefficient of lift per degree increase in angle of attack, or decrease, I guess. A thin airfoil has a value of about 0.1. A really fat airfoil has a value of about 0.08. That surprises me. This is the increase in coefficient of lift per degree. Yes, so every degree you go steeper, for example, if our angle of attack goes up, with each degree, how much lift we gain. Now, I would suggest that a thicker airfoil, 1 degree increase, would generate more lift than a 1 degree increase of a thinner airfoil, but it's actually what, other way around, 0.1 to 0.08. Then I think Then the only thing that I can explain that by is to say you got a regular wing, you got a fatter airfoil. I think that is what they refer to, right? With a thin and a fat airfoil. Or is it heavier? I think it's bigger. Then if you change that angle of attack, let's say like this, try to draw the same kind of airfoil here. And the wing and the angle of attack, no. Yeah, with 1 degree increase of angle of attack, yeah. So let's say that's 1 degree. Then I can explain the decrease of the lift coefficient for this type, the fatter wing, basically because now there is a more frontal wall that these air elements hit on. Because when the degree is less, when it's more flat, we have a lesser angle of attack, they can more easily just glide over and generate lift. But now they stall quicker. I think that's the, yeah, that might be it. It's kind of like a Tim explanation, but I think it's just, again, to wrap my mind around what's going on here. A really fat airfoil has a value of, okay, fatter airfoils have slightly lower lift slopes, apparently. You will find, however, that lift slopes are almost always very close. Okay, the coverage of lift is modified using the slope control, figure 10.6. Yeah, so again, all of this stuff is here. Intercept, I already forgot what intercept was, and slope. But if we change it up, yeah, it makes sense. So you can just see that it's going steeper. So with every degree of angle of attack increase or decrease, yes. And intercept was, it just moves the entire thing up. Yeah, it's just the intercept, like maths, basic graph. But you can see that it also affects the drag component. The lift intercept is the amount of lift the foil puts out at 0 degrees angle of attack. Oh, yeah. So at 0, so we move up that number. Yes, okay. Interesting. Coefficient of lift curvature near the stall. So here is the stall. Here's the stall. We really messed this graph up already. As the angle of attack gets close to stall, the lift slope is no longer linear. Yes, yeah, and you like it to be a little bit curved and not an abrupt kind of stall. Instead, it gradually levels off as it approaches the maximum or stalling coefficient of lift. Yes, this value is modified by the first power control. But we skip linear range here. What does linear range do? This is the range of angle of attack from 0 to either direction that provides a linear increase in lifts. Yeah, okay. I mean, graphically, I know what this number then stands for. And we know what it kind of does, but in terms of... There's little context in my mind now, what that actually means in terms of the airfoil shape. And what I also find interesting is, or a question that I have is, as we are changing these numbers, I would expect that the airfoil shape should change as well, right? But it seems the exact same. So yeah, as the AirfoilMaker manual suggests, the only way which we can change the shape is just through airfoil thickness. Oh, here's the airfoil drag div mag. Yes, put at the section thing here for different Reynolds numbers. Yeah, but apparently these numbers are just virtual things. Okay. Curious about the Airfoil Labs 172. What are they doing? Don't save. Low res. Airfoils. Yes, they also made their own. NECA 2412, a low Reynolds and a high Reynolds. Low and high. Yes, but they did not change. They did not make also a root and a tip one. So in that sense, laminar is more accurate, it seems. Yes, but they did change it. They did not they did not keep the NECA 2412 default one that is provided with X-Plane. We need to find information for that graph in AirfoilMaker so we can input the same numbers and get the same graph for the root and the tip one. Because I'm not going to copy paste. I haven't copy paste anything from the default 172 so far. We just looked at it just to understand what we're doing. But with the airfoil, I have not seen any documentation on that yet. We're already explicitly searched for it, but that's going to be a task. Quite a task. Interesting though. Yes, so they made their own. What we could do, let's load up our Cessna because it's so pretty. Ha! What about this? Because it gets a little bit boring to go through all of these different. We're almost there. And I guess if we just need to replicate that graph, we can just tinker with these numbers to see what they are doing. And I don't really care about that much of an understanding of what they are exactly. We know that this is a stall. We know that this is a different angle of attack. We know that kind of how these things interact. Momentum or moment is still a bit weird, but apparently it's something important. Coefficient of lift drop from, yeah, so I think these are just very simple explanations of what all of these different numbers are. We might refer to them. Yeah, there are 3 other pages of information in AirfoilMaker. These are not required to make a successful airfoil, but you would probably look at them at least once during the development of an airfoil. The plus 180 or minus 180 and plus 180 coefficients. Yeah, that's that tab. This window of the angle of attack minus 180 tab is just an information display. This shows the complete airfoil coefficient from 180. Ah, yes, I now see it. So we've been looking at this range of angle of attack so far. So minus, what was it, 16 or something like that to plus 16. You can see here that dip of the stall. You can see it here as well, close to 0, the drag. But now we can see it also when it's flying upside down and doing all kinds of other weird angle of attacks. Well, it's not necessary that you need to fly upside down. It's just relative to the wind, but still. Yes. These coefficients would only be used if you were flying backwards. Yeah, exactly. When you're flying backwards or some other unusual attitude. Yeah, so that's weird. But with a helicopter, for example, you can do that weird stuff. And also with a stunt airplane. With a helicopter, you can imagine just taking off and just go backwards. Well, how does that affect then the airfoil? That's weird with the Skyhawk wing. If we're doing things right, we're only flying into straight forward into the wind. If you change any of the parameters on the left, you will see that all of the editing you did above was only working on the small section from -20 to +20. There is normally no need to change the coverage outside this range because it doesn't matter if your airfoil was designed by Boeing or by Airbus. The performance of any airfoil is about the same when your plane is fluttering through the air like a falling leaf. It is possible to change these values by editing the airfoil text file directly, but this is only useful if you have a gigantic amount of data on your airfoil, blah, 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 blah. But again, you can imagine with AirfoilMaker and also with PlaneMaker, you can make some pretty out there, weird looking, original looking, inventive looking planes or aircraft that do not follow the general kind of principles of flying. Obviously the same physics apply, but for example flying backwards or something like that. And you can experiment with that stuff using PlaneMaker and AirfoilMaker, which is interesting. So it's there. There's another, what's that for? The LD stuff. This is another information page. It's useful to check the results of your entries by calculating the LD, lift over drag ratio. The lift over drag ratio, that's where the LD stands for, okay? For a hypothetical wing. A hypothetical wing. So wing, that's not actually our wing, but it's imagined, or same alphas. I don't quite get this. Oh, excuse me. Remember, the coefficients on the previous pages are never found in real life because they refer to an imaginary wing of infinite length. I didn't read about that. Remember, the coefficients on the previous pages are never found in real life because they refer to an imaginary wing of infinite length. I missed something crucial. Oh, infinite length, wingtip, wingspan wise, infinite length. A measuring of infinite length, yes, because obviously this is a limited length, but they mean inwards. Wingspan wise, yes. We didn't set that up. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. Yes. So, where were we? Remember, the coefficient of the previous are never found in real life because they refer to an imaginary of infinite length. Even wind tunnel data must be corrected for the effect of only having a specific length of the theoretical infinite wing. Okay. Enter the aspect ratio, AR to use for LD estimation at right and below. We don't have a hover, okay? Enter the aspect ratio for your plane and the efficiency factor, that's E beneath. A glider or U2 Dragon Lady with extremely long wings might have an aspect ratio of 30. A light aircraft such as the Cessna 180 has an aspect ratio of 7.3. The aspect ratio of a straight wing is the wingspan divided by the chords. Makes sense. For any other shape of wing, the easiest way to calculate IR is to square the wingspan and divide by the wing area. I think I found that information in our manuals as well. And with performance assessment, but I'm not sure whether this is a 172S. It's just a Skyhawk 2/100, and I don't know what that means. Also, this is from the from Jane's All the World's Aircraft book from 1977. So I know for sure that this is not an S because it was released in 1998 onwards. And it's still current. But I did read about it. Well, we need to look that up. We can also calculate it because we know the wingspan and the chords and stuff. But we can put that in, okay? And that, I guess that number then manipulates or changes equally, or is applied to all of the stuff that we put in here, or because here also we set all kinds of lift coefficients and stuff, all of these graphs. What happened? Let's just tinker with these numbers and see what's going on. Yeah. So it keeps the same shape, the same kind of angles and angle 1 degree per lift and stuff that we've been talking about so far, and it just makes it, yeah, it changes it. Okay. Section. The section page is used to influence the visual representation of the wing profile and X-wing. The visual. Many real wings are almost flat on the bottom or have different bulges to the typical airfoil. Section. Yeah. This has no effect on the way the plane flies in X-plane. It's only for the visual model. Okay, so that makes sense. So while we are changing all of these numbers, I would expect that in real life, obviously the wing should look different because there's no other way by which we can change the performance of that airfoil by changing the physical shape of it. But obviously that's not how sophisticated the AirfoilMaker is. So this is just visually. If we do this, we might in the real world create an immense amount of drag and also no lift at all because the wind cannot go over it and blah 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 blah. And so obviously these numbers and graphs would dramatically change, but this is just graphically. So that means that in our case we have 2 separate tasks. Well, we got many more subtasks, but generally you could say, well, we need to look for pictures of the root wing shape. Can we load those up here? Do we have a background like with PlaneMaker? No, we cannot load in any pictures here. So we can do some minor changes, might be cool. Yeah, that's the thickness that we can change. Kind of like the radius thing that we were looking at before with the fuselage and stuff. Yeah. Thanks for the follow, Pep. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, so we need to look that up, and next to that we need to put in the right numbers. And we mostly already have the right numbers because we got the NECA 2412, but apparently also the Airfoil Labs Cessna Skyhawk and the Laminar Skyhawk, the default 172, have still changed some of those data thingies. That would suggest to me that there is documentation on that somewhere. It could be that they didn't change anything in these menus here with the Reynolds stuff, because that's just most likely persistent across the entire wings or all those wing sections, but perhaps because the only thing that I can think of that does change is this graph, because the wings surface stuff, so this formula is obviously different, or the result of that, the product of that formula is obviously different from wing section to wing section because the airfoil has a different surface. This surface of this inner thing is different than the one there. So perhaps that's the only difference. Perhaps Laminar and Airfoil Labs have not secret tables that show different kind of coefficients and stuff for the root and for the tip chunk of the wing, but they've only corrected for this number. That's something that we can test. Shall we do that? File, open, don't save. Yeah, so again, open airfoil. This is the standard 2412 that we are loading, where AirfoilMaker is saying, just keep it at this, doesn't really matter, don't bother. Where we are saying, well, you can never stop a curious mind. So now we are opening up another. I think we can run 2, can we? Someone said to me in stream that that was possible, but with Mac, perhaps not. Applications. AirfoilMaker? No, it's in the Explain folder. And I needed to put it in some weird other Explain. Yeah. Can we load another one? Oh. No. Okay. Then we make a screenshot. Yeah. Hello. Yes. Let's also make a screen dump of the section. And also here of this. This is where I would expect to see a change. Again, we're only interested in the numbers actually, but. And this is nothing different. They will probably not change anything about this. We also got the different Reynolds numbers. But that's something for later. Let's just see what happens. So, okay. This is interesting. So we open up. Yeah, so this is this folder again, the airfoils folder is already provided with Explain. So these are the default airfoils that we can assign or use in PlaneMaker. You can also go to the aircraft folder of our already installed aircraft and load those up if they also include a separate airfoils folder, a subfolder in their aircraft folder. So for example, Laminar Research Cessna 172 has an airfoils folder. Most likely we're gonna need to make a airfoils folder as well to provide our own unique airfoils. So apparently these are the airfoils that are loaded up with the default 172. We got a good propeller, a root. I think these are not necessarily unique, by the way. They're just copied. I mean, again, these seem quite familiar. These are the exact same airfoils that we also seen with the template airfoils folder. And I guess once we save, or perhaps we need to do that manually, we need to obviously copy those into our airfoils folder, because otherwise we cannot zip and send our aircraft to anyone else, because we need those airfoils. Our wings need those airfoils. But anyways, we can see here a root and a tip, and that's something that they probably changed. So let's load it up. This is most likely a modified, slightly or significantly, we don't know, 2412 wing. Now, here we go, guys. Yep, it's different. It's different, all right. Intercept, 24. It's 25 here. The slope, 13. It's 10.20. They have to have tables. This is not something that you just... Yeah, most of these numbers are different. Okay, so it's not just the surface stuff thing. I want to look at that. 80, it's actually the same. And with the wing section, looks different. Looks different. They have data, and we not yet. This one is 12, has a 12.12 thickness. This one has a 0.15 ratio of thickness. And it also, yeah, it does have a different shape. I mean, these yellow lines, I think, are not that important. important really, because these just represent the max, the top and the bottom, which is just this number. The real difference is that, I mean, this edge is kind of like the same, this one as well, but this one seems different. Seems longer and a bit more steep than that one. Hey Scrab, good to see you. I got into wet yesterday and now building an airport already. That's awesome, Scrab. Hoping you're making progress. And having fun. So, we know there's something going on with those wings of the Skyhawk and we need to find information on that front. No, I don't need to copy that. That was a mistake. Okay, so we generally know what AirfoilMaker is about. We also know what it is not about. So this is just visual representation. Again, we don't care. We don't care as much because no matter what the model looks like, it's mostly about the numbers, how it actually flies. This is just a visual thing. Still though, I like my Skyhawk to be very close to perfect, which is a impossible task, I know, but at least I would like to see a picture of that cross-section of the wing to be able to at least approximate the right airfoil based off a reference to a manual, not to another aircraft like Laminor's the Falcon 70, because clearly it also differs from the manual. So we are actually making quite some good progress with our Skyhawk. It seems much more precise, which is good. So we need information. Let's also load up the tip one, airfoil section. Yeah, why did I throw those away? What did I just do? That one, yes, and that one. There it is, yes. The tip seems exactly the same. In shape, at least. Okay, and let's look at the numbers then. 0.25 are also different. Almost every number is different. Okay. Okay, that's fine. We need to look for those. We need to look for that information. So, what is this called? Such a graph. Coefficients, airfoil, something like that. And not only that, we don't only need it for a particular airfoil, because that information we have. We need it specific for the Skyhawk, and not only that, we need also specific for each wing section. Scrap, yes, so the tutorials from Jan Vogel are very good and I'm building together with him at the moment, and then I'll go off and do my own airports. That's awesome, Scrap. That's the way to go. Just follow tutorials. It only takes time. Yeah, that's the best way to go. It could be that the Laminar has gotten all of that information from this book that they are actually referring to. Once you understand the basic of airfoil theory and knowledge, we recommend theory of wing sections. Yeah, this book has the lift, drag, and moment plots of many airfoils in it. And now my drawing tool works. Close. Theory of wing sections looks nice. I saw a PDF there. $20. Theory of wing sections. All right. I guess not $20. Download. Can we just easily rotate all of these? Edit. Rotate. Boom. The other way around. No, all of them. No, all of them. Huh? Oh, it's only that one. That's annoying. Okay, I don't really care then. Preface. Yeah, it's obviously... we cannot search this because these are just images. Yeah, this is nice, but this is finding a nail. Perhaps it has an index. NECA. Look at that. Different stations, upper servers. NECA 2412. Stations and ordinates given in % of airfoil chords. Yes, but that's not what we need. But I do like this chapter or this appendix stuff. But we need so many more different variables that these tables do not provide. So I guess aerodynamic characteristics of wing sections. Lovely. Yes-ish. So, drag. I recognize that shape. Yes, so we will most likely... So this is the NECA 006 wing section. Oh yeah, these are the... This is the lift command. Yeah, so... Okay, but... No, but this is just, again, general airfoils. And chances are that we will find such a page or such a graph that just perfectly matches with our NECA 2412 airfoil that we already have. What I'm searching for is such a graph specifically for the 172 and for those different wing sections, and I don't think that we will find those. So this was just a reference, or at least not in this book. This is just a reference to airfoils in general, which is nice. Airfoils. Let me see where Rush is. Is he still idle? He's still idle. We need to search. That's what we need to do. I'm a little bit hungry. I want to get myself just a cookie or something. I'll be back. Yes. We cannot work on the Skyhawk without any, well, they're not particularly cookies, but some brain food. Scrap, that's the hard part when making aircraft, all the research and tables. Yes, that's true. Well, hard work. It's also fun just to look for that stuff. And also by searching, you also learn and come across interesting stuff that is just interesting to learn about. I feel that we've been listening to this song forever now. Let's go to chill. I feel like chilling. Okay. Airfoil. Coefficient. Well, of lift, but let's just make it coefficient. 172. Let's make it just 172. Station or section. Airfoil and wing properties. Stall coefficient. Looks good. Let's have a look. Nothing that really represents what we were looking at in AirfoilMaker. There's all kinds of grass, but not ones that I... And again, I would expect to see some kind of a graph that we can work with. Or that we can just imitate or copy paste, you could say. Or perhaps these are just, we just need to look at the propeller. Yeah, that's also an entirely other... No. What am I doing? This is just general explanation. You would expect to look. It's not also in a manual. Let's also use. Oh my gosh, NECA 2412. Airfoil tools. Yeah, this one we already see. We already seen. Yeah, versus alpha, lift and drag. We now know what that all means. But again, this is just general NECA 2412 data. And I like to see it specifically for the 172, if that's possible. All this actual building makes me insane. Scrap, yeah. Yeah, it's making aircraft, and I guess also with making airports, a lot of tiny detail stuff. It's a meditation, some Zen kind of practice. This is not it. Oh. Chapter 5, wing design. Martin, may I post the possibility? Obviously, Martin. Yes, please. Please do. Yeah, any documentation you guys might have on this, share it. Please share. Much appreciate that. Yeah, again, these are just general explanations of what's going on. This is actually a nice picture. What I'm looking for again is specific 172, and I could do that much faster. Cessna 172. Engine. Yeah, this is not it. No grass, but a lot of numbers. Sounds good. Ah, that one I already have, Martin. That one I already have. So let's see if it's indeed in that one. What I'm also curious, that's entirely different, but let me just do it. I've been messing around with sharing screenshots to my followers at Twitter because many people, I guess, do not have the time to look at these huge streams, but they are curious at our progress. So I like to be able just to make screenshots and share them quite instantly on my Twitter. But so far, no luck. So this might be an interesting try. No, just a entire screen dump. There it is. And now if I hit Twitter, let's see if it works. Anyways, distracted, gone away. The performance chart Martin referred me to or reminded me of. That's this one. Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of numbers. But what we need to find is CL and C. There's also something that we can look at perhaps. Wing data for the 172. Thickness 12%. That's something that we can put in. So that's PlaneMaker already. CF, I don't know. Something that we need to put in PlaneMaker, I think. Computer analysis drag summary. This is more like it. The tail, what's the fin? Funny. This manual also refers to the theory of wing sections by Abbott and van Donhoff. Yay, have been useful-ish. Any support, any guides are useful, guys. And Martin, thank you. This stuff is, I think, more useful, this document, for PlaneMaker and putting in all of the numbers, which is very, very relevant. I have not found anything like it so far. Stall speeds and stuff. A Reynolds number. But not in reference to anything that we are concerned with AirfoilMaker. No, this is not it. This is also not it. I just need to search for 172, and I did already. Station section, yeah. Let me also combine those. Aerodynamic performance of the NECA. Bring it on. New Orleans Jazzed. Sounds promising. Abstract. I just need tables. Perhaps I should also include that in my search. Hey! Angle of attack. Degrees. Lift simulated. Yeah, experimental. So they're doing something something like an optimization with the wing. Coverage of lift distribution, simulate and experimental. So this is actually where the stall happens, and as you can see with that lift, we don't see that rapid drop. Plywood and stuff, no. Theory of wing sections. Well, again, summary of airfoil data. Loading, I think. Can we search? Perhaps. Yeah, this is just the book. This is actually a better PDF. Mm, 172. 1. 14. All right. Well, the number 172 can also refer to many other things. Yeah, it's just a number 172. System 172. 0. And again, 172. Yeah, it's not that fast. Let's just go through all the 172s though. There were 36 or so, which is not too much. No, 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 no. No, no. Figure 172. No, this is hopeless. But just to be sure. I think we just, yeah, so they're the same stations and stuff that we already been looking at in the appendix. Already cycled through all the results. Okay. National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. Ooh. Yeah, it's just 172. Also just random numbers. Ratio of maximum lift component to minimum profile drag coefficient. It does look good though. But these are just random numbers. Skyhawk. Same documents. Airfoil data PDF. Seems much too abstract. Aircraft generic information. Skyhawk 172, naked 2412. Data sheet. Yeah, but this is just, again, general, I think. And nothing that we can use. The incomplete guide to airfoil usage. 172. And again, we see the performance chart that we already, performance PDF that we were looking at. Yeah, this is just one giant list. I'm familiar with that website. Scale modeling of the ones. Well, even though we're not doing things on scale in that sense, perhaps we can find something about it. Or is it just a plain old, yeah, no. Wind tunnel tests on a model Cessna. Oh. think I've already seen this one. Lift coefficient, 75% power. Drag coefficient, yeah. But again, are there any references? Wow, this is cool though. These wind tunnel kind of experiments. References. This is the one that we've also been looking at, the assessment performance chart. Yeah, so this is a good one. Experimental study of flow separation at low speeds. Does not exist anymore. Fluid, that's not it. Close return wind tunnel, no. Whirling arms. Forbidden. Thank you. Thank you. Cessna 172S. Yeah, I think there's just something mentioned about NECA. The NECA 2412 airfoil is optimized more for climbing crews. Yeah. It looks like spam, but let's see. Oh man. No, these are just general performance data. Where are we going to find that information, guys? I think I'm just searching too generically. Where did Laminar and the Airfoil Labs get their data from? Perhaps they didn't find any tables. I'm not saying that I should stop my search, but perhaps perhaps they were just tinkering with, they just did some test flights in X-Plane and optimized those numbers to get the right performance going. It could be that just the basic numbers are just set in with PlaneMaker, and doing test flights is mostly a matter of doing AirfoilMaker. But that becomes quite a complex task if you Martin. Yeah. That's just the part when I would get frustrated and then quit, Scrub says. Yeah. I mean, with the Airfoil Labs, it says now, they use a low Reynolds and a high Reynolds airfoil, but it's the same for the entire wingspan. So when they need to change something, they just change it once. But with the default 172, these guys also differ or distinguish between the more root wing section and the more tip one. And so they need to tweak variables specific to those particular wing sections, which seems much more complex. And also more accurate, but hey, UK Jim, did you manage setting your OBS settings or not yet? This is the stuff that we are interested in. This is the kind of table that I'm looking for. So the alpha, angle of attack, different. We don't need to have every angle of attack there, but just a general one, so we can just match a line of the lift and the drag and the moment with lift, drag, and moment. And something else, and something else. That's the kind of table that I'm looking for different Reynolds numbers. Exactly. I want a page with these tables per Reynolds number kind of range. Most preferably. Hey, they only use... Which one did we open? This is the tip. This is the root. We only see one now, one tab, but with the default one, 2412 popular. Yeah, we have multiple. This is what those are these buttons for, I guess. New lower Reynolds, delete this Reynolds, or newer higher Reynolds, and you can be even more precise. So okay, so the popular one, so the basic one, has actually more fine-grained information, while the System 172 SP, well, the root, either one, there's actually only one, a 3, only for the Reynolds 3. But that's a bit weird, because in PlaneMaker we can set one up for a low and a high Reynolds number. So I would expect, this is the root one, so this is 3. I would expect to have 2 then. One for the high and one for the low. Yeah, this is a bit higher. I've been streaming 720 for a while, but would like to go 1080p. So playing around with settings. Still opted for 2400, encoder locked at 30 FPS. Well, sounds good, Jim. Sounds good. I think I would do 1080 as well, but I found that my OBS is not stable enough, and that's something that I don't like. Also, I noticed that there's a slight decrease in my FPS when I do so, on top of that, and that's the last thing that I want, so that's why I just stick to 720p, and I think it's fine. Toei. Airfoil tools, that sounds like a familiar website. Yeah, no, this is not what I mean, Toei. This is just a general, this is the airfoil that we are using. However, this is more like a generic airfoil, and it seems that the default 172 and X-Plane, also the Airfoil Labs 172, use a modified version of this typical airfoil for general aviation aircraft, which includes much other information than just this. At least? I think so. Yeah, because it's just the default 2412. So you can see here all kinds of different numbers here, and Reynolds, well, the 172 uses something different. Apparently. And I need to find a manual or a table that shows me those numbers, like this one, these ones, so we can put those in. And that's hard. And I think this is just a site that shows all of the different airfoils. But we need those specific for aircraft. And apparently there's some information there. But it could be that this information is not available in the form of a table. But this is just stuff that... These are just numbers that they derive from flying the airfoil, flying the aircraft, and optimizing it in flight. And, well, looking at your performance tables and noting, well, at 2,500 feet, with this temperature, no winds, this pressure altitude, this density altitude, we should reach this kind of a whatever. And if not, then you should change something in these settings. But that seems such a task. My gosh, I don't know what settings to change here. So rather I would see such a picture specific for the Skyhawk 172S airfoil that we can mimic. That we can just, I mean, I have no problem changing these numbers if I have something to change it towards. But just based off of flight performance, that would be an impossible task. A fun task though. I'm quite curious to see how we systematically how we could do that. But thanks, Jim. No problem. So I feel a bit stuck. Still very much interested, but a bit stuck because I need this kind of a table. Different angles of attacks. That's this horizontal axis. And then for these 3 different dimensions of what an airfoil, how an airfoil can behave in terms of lift, drag, and moment. These numbers that I can then set in to mimic such a graph. And this table, as you see here, approaches a format that I would like to find for different Reynolds numbers. And Reynolds numbers are values that correspond to particular airflow and speed. And the higher the number is, the faster you go, I think. And how more rigid the air is, because it's going so fast. It cannot really change that much over the airfoil. So you set the airfoil characteristic based on different ranges of Reynolds numbers for lift, drag, and moment for different angle of attacks. That's the scheme of, that's something that we learned today. So that's the general task for using AirfoilMaker, and it also seems that that's the primary task for making your airplane fly the way it should fly. Now, I could just tinker with these numbers just in a trial and error modus, but then we would sit here for an entire year, I think. And I love you guys. Also, I love this video series, but I'd like to be a little bit more efficient. So I would like to find an authorized table that, I guess from wind tunnel data, like documents that we're looking at here, that we can just input or compare to this chart, so we can make the lines go across the same reference points that we see here. That's what's going through my mind right now. So yeah, the Reynolds number is a non-dimensional number which describes the state the air is in. Well, non-dimensional, that number is comprised of different factors, like density of air, speed, and some other things. But it's just one huge number. And indeed, it refers to the state that the Skyhawk would be in. Let me have a close look. This is the document that comes closest to what we're looking for. Actually, a scientific paper. Published 2015, International Journal of Engineering Research and General Science. Sounds good. Design of the NECA 2412 airfoil. That's the general type that we're using. And it's analysis at different angles of attacks. Great. Reynolds numbers and wind tunnel test. That's indeed a title that looks good. The only thing that's missing is Skyhawk. But perhaps they used the Skyhawk to do this. Because I googled with the Skyhawk, so perhaps it's in here. Let's search Skyhawk 00 172 00, just 172 twice. Yes, here it is. NECA 2412 is slow speed airfoil. This airfoil is used in single engine Cessna 152, 172 and 182 airplanes. Yes, but I'd like it to be specific for the 172. And so these numbers might be just what we're looking for, but they might be the exact same numbers that we already have in AirfoilMaker. We already have this airfoil, but I want it specific for the Skyhawk. It feels like feels like too much to ask to find that information. That's what my gut feeling is saying. Like, okay, Tim, that's cool, but you will not find that information. And the only way to approach it is by flying the thing. And I think we then need to fly the Skyhawk with some data refs on, for example, the angle of attack and the lift component and stuff. And we're gonna fly it with different angle of attacks up to 16 degrees. Either way. Well, this is gonna be weird. I mean, we know that the Skyhawk 172 stalls at a specific speed. Well, not really at a specific speed, it can stall at any speed, but with a specific angle of attack, and that's what we see here. So that's a test flight task. That's what we could do. We could just say, okay, we got our current Skyhawk, we're gonna fly it, we're gonna go for positive angle of attacks, and once we reach a particular angle, in this case 16 degrees, we would expect to see a stall. We hear the stall horn and we stall. If we don't hear that and don't notice that, and it comes later with a lesser or greater angle of attack, then we can say, okay, so this thing should be shoved to the left or shoved to the right, and we can change some numbers. That could also be the only way by which we can approach a realistic flight performance of our Skyhawk, is just by doing such flights. We know from the performance tables when the thing should stall. But we don't quite know in terms of drag. I mean, we do have the general NECA 2412 airfoil, so we kind of know generally what it should do. Perhaps we should just use it as a baseline and then fly the thing. And that's what the test flying is about. And this is actually, this app, the AirfoilMaker, that's what we're going to use in parallel with X-Plane while we're flying it to get these curves right. That might be the main task for our test flight. And PlaneMaker is mostly, not entirely, but mostly relevant to just creating the control surfaces and stuff. Hello? And obviously also here we can put in numbers that have to do with drag and stuff. So here we only look at the airfoil, only the wings, but obviously we should also set drag coefficients for the fuselage, for the wheels, for the pitot tube, for the exhaust, for everything. Those should be right. We probably can look those up using that PDF that Martin shared as well, or reminded me of actually. So that's the performance thingy. This thing. I think there are a lot of drag coefficient mentioned here. Oh, there is Rush. Hey mate, sorry I'm late, still have time. Well, actually I don't, unfortunately. In 10 minutes I need to stop my stream. But I would so much love you guiding us, giving pointers and stuff. Perhaps we should just arrange another day where you can drop by. Rush, we are venturing into AirfoilMaker. Just a general kind of summary, and perhaps you can refer to this or further give explanations or pointers in the next stream when you join in on the Discord. AirfoilMaker. So we noticed, we already knew from the beginning. I can drop in for a few minutes now if you like before you sign off. Sure, but just for 10 minutes so, and I would still love to have you on another stream, Rush. There are so many questions and it's so interesting. So Discord. Let me stop the music here. You already posted me on Discord. Yeah, so I just call you, start voice call. Let's see what happens. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, I hear 505.
Hey, cool, Rush. I don't know if the sound is too loud here, guys, so let me know in chat whether that's the case. Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. I'm sorry, man. I overslept. I was like, oh no. So I'm really sorry.
Doesn't matter. I was busy developing, and I saw on Discord that you were idle, and I also thought that you were still asleep. Sweet dreams, hopefully.
Yeah,
So, Rush, I asked you just to just give a general kind of description of how you do your test flights in X-Plane. Perhaps also in parallel with AirPlaneMaker and with PlaneMaker. I don't know quite know the process, so I'm quite curious to see how you go about doing that because I'm approaching that stage. Still, I guess, just even in preparation for those test flights, we were now working on getting the airfoil right of the Skyhawk, and I'm longing for a lot of data that I cannot find in at least through Google search. So that's an entirely different topic, but that's one that I'm focused on right now. So those are the two kind of subjects so far that I would really appreciate your guidance or some pointers at least in these remaining minutes that can get me going a bit into the right direction at least.
yeah. So what's really hard there is seeing how you're talking there is just looking at the airfoil generator and the data there and saying, oh, okay, well, the airfoil generator there says that the aircraft's going to stall once it goes past 16 degrees of alpha. What's hard with this is, say, the 172 is the data on the 172 is not really complete, even though it's a very well-known aircraft, is that you know that there's a different airfoil at the root of the wing to the tip of the wing, yeah? Yeah, so the tip of the wing has almost a symmetrical airfoil, and at the root has the 2412, just the standard cookie cutter airfoil.
Right.
So when you just look at this airfoil that you had there, which was at the root, well, the way X-Plane interpolates between those two. Those wing stations is it's not going to stall at 16 alpha. There's that 2.5. I think it's 2.5 degree of wing twist. There's some wing twist there.
Yeah, three degrees in total. Yeah.
3 degrees total. Yeah, it's like -0.5 at the tip and +2.5, if I remember right.
Something like that.
Yeah. So you really are onto the test flight thing because I think you can get bogged down by that data. You've just got to jump in the aeroplane and test it.
Yeah,
I
guess so. Yeah.
The way that I test it is I kind of split into two things. There's subjective data that I can use, and then there's objective data. And the objective data is things like stall speed and all of these other things. Yeah. So my first test flight that I always do is a stall speed test. So get the thing off the ground. I start up somewhere that's at sea level. I just fly around for 5 minutes, stalling, basically. That's all I do.
But Rush, I guess you also run some data refs or some windows, I think, through X-Plane where you can see what the current angle of attack is, or other stuff that you need some additional numbers rather than just your airspeed indicator and your attitude indicator.
Yeah. Yes, correct. That's a really good actual gotcha there, is that all the data that we know of as pilots is airspeed, right? The IAS. Well, in this case, that's not the real number. What we really need is the calibrated airspeed. If you use the IAS, it's not the actual speed that you're flying at due to pitot error, blah, 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 blah. So those data refs, they pop up. There's a little section when we come back next time you stream. We'll go through them all. But I get the data ref numbers up. I get the calibrated airspeed numbers up, and there's a few other things that I get.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well in your streams.
Yeah, so they're important to have, but the first thing when you start test flying, in my opinion, is get the stall speeds right. Just fly around, get the stall speeds right, because it's going to set everything else from that. VNE is not really an issue for us, but stall speeds are. Because it's going to set your drag profile. It's going to set a lot of things, and then you move up from there. Even post-stall. But anyway, yeah.
And in Russia, I mean, also in PlaneMaker, there is stuff that we need to put in drag coefficients and stuff of the fuselage and whatever. I guess that needs to be set first before we do those test flights and then mess around in AirfoilMaker. Am I right? Or
Yes and no. I wouldn't say you need to worry too much about drag right away. The reason being is that, well, drag doesn't really affect your stall speed. It will affect the way that you approach the stall. So you need to think.
yes, yeah.
So at this point, you need to think like a real test pilot. And I've got some data here. I'll send you some links later. Is that a real test pilot, when they're testing a stall, is that they approach a stall in different ways. You know, us as sim pilots, we might fly along and just yank the stick back and go, oh, is the aircraft stalled? Yeah, sure. Well, a real pilot will do stall tests, approaching a stall at about a 1 knot per second deceleration rate.
Right,
So,
okay.
So you'll start off at 60 knots, for example. You'll get the aircraft in trim at 60 knots, so you can fly hands off.
Yeah.
This is real test pilot-y stuff. And then what you'll do is
Rush,
you go
this
ahead,
is so cool.
and you'll start decelerating at 1 knot per second. So you don't have to have a stopwatch out or anything, but you just want to see, okay, 59,
gotcha.
58. And so how you approach the stall does actually dictate how the stall happens. So we go 1 knot a second, we keep pulling, and then we note when we get buffet, wing drop, or anything like that. We can write it down on a little piece of paper ahead of us. And do that maybe twice, because the first few times you're never going to get the decel rate properly. You're going to go too fast. And then just for funsies, try it a little bit faster. Try it at like 5 knots. You'll see what I mean. You'll pull the stick back, and all of a sudden you'll stall probably 2 to 3 to sometimes maybe even 10 knots faster than what you would when you approach the stall slowly, when you approach it properly. Mm-hmm. So that's probably that's just the
first step. You mean just the first primary? All right, and this is with flaps up, I guess, right? This is just the basic airfoil, how it behaves, just with
Correct.
with no, yeah.
Because what you're not just testing the stall speed here. What you're testing is that you have the correct wing surface area. So the wing surface area is going to dictate your stall speed. In this case, the airfoil you've got there will dictate the angle of attack that X-Plane thinks you're going to stall at. So if you find that you're stalling too short, like too low an airspeed, well, you have too much surface area of the wing. So there's, the way that lift works, right? Like the whole force gets generated out across the surface area of the wing. Mm-hmm. So if you reduce or add surface area, that will change your stall speed.
Obviously, yeah.
But your stalling alpha is done here in AirfoilMaker.
Right. Yeah. Interesting stuff, man. And I guess it's already at the front door of complexity. I mean, this is just the first. This is kind of like calibrating your general lift coefficient curve, almost. Just getting that stall behavior. And what about the negative angle of attack? Because I just learned today that you obviously can also stall the wing in a negative angle of attack, right? That's the bottom part of I guess we're not going to do that in X-Plane.
No. So any of that, pretty much any data, because, so this is why I don't care about any of that. Yeah, X-Plane needs it because aircraft can fly upside down and backwards. So X-Plane needs the data there. But to get to a negative, to get to a minus... What is that? Like a minus 15 angle of attack. You'd need to be pulling like negative 8G. And
we were thinking about that as well. Yeah. So it's also in the airplane AirfoilMaker manual. Laminar is also saying, well, this is quite unrealistic for normal general aviation flight. But still, So we are only concerned with the realistic stall there in the pluses. Yeah.
Yeah, but you still want the graph to be okay on the negative side for maybe the first 5 degrees, because especially post-stall, when you post-stall, there will be slight changes in the alpha. but the extremes, who cares? You're just going to waste your time on it. So, and if someone writes you an email complaining that the aircraft doesn't work properly at -8G, well,
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So I still need to do some work in PlaneMaker just to get it, even be able to get into the air with the thing. But once I get into the air, that will be the first thing. So to get those stalls,
Yeah.
following the
Yeah.
performance tables, and then that's interesting. So then if I'm off, and that the chances would be that I'm off with my stall speeds or with my angle of attacks, then I need to know. I mean, that's also the general kind of fuzziness around AirfoilMaker, at least in my mind currently. There are so many variables. So I was also curious to know, when you're flying with your drawings and your sketches and your stuff, if you find something that is off, how do you go back to AirfoilMaker or PlaneMaker and know, oh, I just need to increase the surface area of the wing, or oh, I just need to, because it could be anything, right?
It could, yeah. So you're right. There is a myriad, and good news, bad news scenario is it's experience. So you'll end up just going, oh yeah, the plane just doesn't feel right this way, and already looking at your curve there, the drag curve doesn't look right. So it's little things like that. I'll probably talk to you offline about this because AirfoilMaker is not the best tool to make airfoils. There's another tool that I use that is super duper secret, but
I love secret.
I'll show you. Yeah, so I'll show you how to use that offline.
Interesting, but it can still be. I guess that's also how you made the Super Cup, or is it also
correct?
Made?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Alrighty. This is interesting, Rush. I so much appreciate you being here, man. I feel like I need to buy myself an AeroSimGaming sweater as well, just to get into the same spirit. Oh man, this is so cool. But again, and just out of curiosity, we're just starting with this, or I'm just starting with this. How much maths and physics and other really complex? What's in your mind? What's the most complex, most challenging stage of this whole aircraft development part, at least for the what is concerned with the flight model and stuff? So PlaneMaker and PlaneMaker, what's the chunk where you think, well, that's when shit's going to hit the fan?
I think you're already over that. I think you're already over that threshold. It's usually data collection, honestly, because there's a lot of stuff that we now know about aerodynamics in the modern day world, right? We can go and do all sorts of computational fluid dynamics, and there's online resources for those if you really want to use them. But I kind of approach this as if I was in the 1940s, 1938, start of World War II, I've read a lot of the manuals that they would use for test flying because, these were dudes walking around with slide rules and abacus, basically, and they were trying to figure out, hey, why they didn't even know why aircraft were flying back then. They were just like, look, we don't sure. There's like some Bernoulli's theorem stuff happening. So I would approach looking at aircraft and trying to quantify. That's really what we're trying to do, is quantify and then code an aircraft here. A lot by feel. I put myself in the seat with my joystick and I pretend I'm a test pilot and I operate the thing like they would. And sure, it's a lot shorter. What they would do over a period is that's one of the advantages we have, right? Is in a real airplane, there's fuel, there's weight. In the flight sim, I can change the weight of the aircraft mid-flight. I don't need to land and put fuel in or add shots of lead and stuff like that. I just fly along and go, oh, I want the plane to be a little bit heavier. Great, let's see what happens. So I honestly think the biggest thing is data collection, and then there is just a grind of test flying, because you're going to test fly and you're going to be like, this isn't right. I can't tell what's not right. And you're not going to know, just like you said, you're not going to know where to turn. You'd be like, oh, look, the detail rate's a little bit fast, or it just won't stall, or...
But how much time does it take on average for you if you... to optimize that flight model to make it approximately a good flight model? How much time would it take you to do those test flights? How many test flights? Just an average, so I have a general sense of how much time it would take. Not that I really care, but I'm just curious.
Easily a week. Easily a week.
Right.
sometimes longer. Like the aircraft that I know, it's a shorter time period. Aircraft that I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you've got to test it at every altitude range, weight combinations. You're
Oh,
doing all
yeah,
this in
that's
zero
true.
wind, ISA
Yeah.
conditions. But yeah, there's quite a lot because you can skip, like you can just, you know, take the aircraft to 8,000 feet instantly or drop it to 5. But there's also times where you want to check climb rates, decel rates. So then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
start building a. You'll see when I do a quick test flight of aircraft, is my first thing I do is I'll take off, I'll do some stalls, and I try and do everything in one little flight. So I take off, I'll do some stalls. After I've done some stalls, I'll go, great. I'll level off at 1,000 feet, let the aircraft get stable at about 60 knots at a low speed, and then I'll go ahead and go to a climb rate. So I'll go to whatever the book says as its max performance climb, which will usually be an airspeed and a power setting. So I'll go airspeed, power setting, and I'll start the climb, and I'll sit there and see how it goes to 10,000 feet or a reasonable altitude, all the while taking note of how long it will take me to get to that
Oh man, it
altitude.
sounds
Once I'm
so cool. Yeah, 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 yeah. I totally
yeah,
get what you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And that's the kind of scheme. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so the stall would be the first thing, and I can then gradually build up my feel for the aircraft in reference to the performance tables and the stuff that I would like to see the aircraft show in the sim.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Say again.
Well, that I'm trying to follow your general approach there on how to do that test flight.
Yeah,
So I would start with
yeah,
doing those stalls first, and then from
yeah,
that moment on, gradually do other flight maneuvers or stuff in reference to the performance tables to see if I'm approaching those numbers as best as
yeah.
I can. And you also say, well, it's partly experience. I mean, is there any good resource on how to do those test flights? Is there anything that you're using that you say, well, you should really study that stuff because that provides a structured or more systematic way of doing this? Or is there any rush resource here?
No, so it's a good thing. I probably should write something like that because I read through. There's a test pilot school down in the States, whoever they are. So I've got their resource. There's an experimental aircraft test pilot. Um, I've used those and then grafted into my own because, again, real world versus flight sim, we don't have the same issues.
Yeah.
When they do CG testing, well, we can do that in one flight.
Yeah, obviously.
So there's nothing directly like that. I think the biggest thing is to separate subjective and objective, because you're going to jump in the plane, you're going to go, wow, it feels like an extra 300. It wants to barrel roll and do all these weird things. Well, yeah, you want to ignore those as much as you can. If the plane doesn't feel right, ignore it until the very end because you'll start going after feel, and those feel
Yeah,
things
yeah,
can
yeah,
sometimes
yeah, yeah, yeah,
change
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
objective numbers.
Good one. Good one.
Yeah, so save those for later. Start with the numbers that you can quantify, things that you can
Roger.
quantify,
Yeah.
which stall speed, angle of attack, time to climb, cruise speeds, all of those things. So my first step would be, like we said, stalling, and then after that would actually be top speed. And here's another tip for when you're testing the top speed. So again, test pilot school is that a top speed run is defined as an aircraft flying at a set altitude with a set power, and then you start a timer for 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, that's when you take the top speed. So, and the other way that you get there is the proper way of getting to a top speed is you'll actually say you're going to do a top speed run at 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
What you should do is climb up to 2,200 feet and then descend down at about 100 to 150 foot a minute, back down to 2,000 feet, level off there, then start your timer. So there's a weird bit of math in there where it's easier. An aircraft will find its steady state if you come from above rather than below because of the drag profile, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Whether X-Plane does that, I've no idea, but it's fun to do. So, like, just yeah. So
well, I'm following your book there. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Okay. I'm already feeling like a test pilot or a wannabe test pilot. And my gosh, it's going to take a lot more time than I initially thought, actually. And I also appreciate that pointer, like saying first the numbers, then the subjective feel for how it flies,
Yeah.
because that can lead you, away from those golden numbers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does take time, and I think the biggest time for yourself is probably going to be that learning curve. And that learning, or where do I need to look? Is it the surface area? Is it the clip of the wing?
Yeah.
But half of that is a learning experience where you go, oh, okay, yeah, well, I think it's going to be the chord of the wing because
So this is more like a trial
basically
and error kind of scheme, then, at least in from my perspective right now here. So I just figure that I'm just going to do that, for example, with that stall, and I'm discovering that it's not right, and I'm going to change something, and I will just on the go discover that it had to do with, well, whatever, rather than just going through it in a more structured manner. I guess it's just like following your gut feeling or something like that, and then through that learning, developing some kind of conceptual understanding of what's going on. Or is there some kind of guide that I can follow in that sense? So when I'm off with my stall, then I can say, I go through a 5-step of how to find the right variable in AirfoilMaker.
There's no direct guide. It's just an understanding of aerodynamics.
Yes.
Like what does the aspect ratio of a wing? How does that have any? How does that affect the stall speed?
Yeah. So it becomes also quite an intuitive understanding of what aerodynamics actually are, rather than just plain numbers. Obviously.
Yeah. So you can go, oh, okay, well, if I have a higher aspect ratio wing, because here's the thing, X-plane is perfect. So you're trying to fit perfect real-world data into a non-perfect, imperfect, whatever the fancy word is. So you're trying to fit perfect data into something that's not perfect. And you can sit there and just keep ramming that data into the simulator, and it's never going to work. So at some point, you have to go, okay, I've got it as close as I can with the data. Now I just need to tune for X-plane. So you then need to tune for X-plane, and that's the hardest part, is because you'll be bashing your head. You're like, I've put the right number in, I've got the data.
That's a good one. Yeah. I can imagine that will be the main issue there. Yeah, or the challenge, I should say.
Yeah.
Rush, this is so cool. Okay, so your general advice would be just, well, I guess just first make and order all of the PlaneMaker stuff so the thing can fly, then fly and do a basic first short flight, and just start with the stalls, perhaps some climbs and descents, so just to get a general idea of what the airplane is doing or not doing, and from that just be a kind of an aerodynamic genius and just tinker with some numbers and try to optimize the model. And while you go, just develop a better understanding of what you're actually doing.
I think just write down some notes. Write down some notes from the flight, and then look at those notes, and then go, oh, okay. Have some time to think about what your notes could mean. Is there too much surface area? Maybe I don't have the right airfoils in. Maybe, but I can tell you right now, the biggest thing is once you've got the airfoils correct, your job is going to be so much easier. But I'll talk to you about that offline. But once you've got the airfoils correct, like X-plane is actually really accurate.
All right. So, but that would suggest then that I've read some stuff about, obviously, AirfoilMaker versus PlaneMaker, and many say, well, it's actually the AirfoilMaker, or the airfoil rather than the application, but the airfoil that really makes the most significant difference in how the aircraft flies, rather than what you put into PlaneMaker. Is that correct in your view?
No, like you can't have one without the other. But it helps. So you can make a crappy airfoil in AirfoilMaker fly close to the real plane. You can make it fly close to the real plane by putting the data into PlaneMaker. But if you have the correct data, if you have really good airfoils in AirfoilMaker, or generated through this other software, yeah, you will get a better aircraft, but it's no guarantee. Like there's people that
Right.
use external software and their planes are still poo. There's people that just use stock X-Plane 11 airfoils and they still fly okay. Um, so yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm really curious to see what application you are using actually to do those airfoils. At the same time, though, I think I'm also going to lose some transparency to the viewers because partly this series is also about inspiring other sim pilots as well, just to tinker with PlaneMaker or even make their own aircraft. So I guess that would I cannot stream that stuff. I guess.
Well, I mean, if you want to, if what you're trying to achieve is showing how someone at home can do this, then sure, do it. Because the other software, like you almost need a degree to run. It's really difficult.
Oh my gosh.
You need to understand, yeah, you need to understand a lot, like
Right.
Reynolds numbers and blah 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 blah. It's very difficult. So if you want to stick with what you've got here, then you still can get accurate airfoils here. You still can. So if that's what you want to stick with, being able to show everything, then just do it here in AirfoilMaker.
Yeah, but
It's simple as that.
it wouldn't be Super Cup style then in the end. You cannot be that precise or sophisticated with the airfoil.
No, you can't. No, you can get fairly because there's gaps in the data, right? You've probably found that when you've looked for a 2412, well, what happens at high speed? Like, what does a 2412 look like at high speed? There's no data for that anywhere. You have to
Right.
make the
Right.
data yourself. Yeah, so it's
Right. Well, I'm curious to see the app anyway, just to see what
yeah.
kind of environment you're working in when you're doing your stuff. But perhaps I'm going to stick with one. Because one thing that triggered me also with AirfoilMaker is I obviously already found in the manuals that the Sky 172 was based off the NACA 2412. But then when I was looking at I loaded up the default 172 also with the airfoil labs just to see what those guys were doing with their wings and their airfoils. I saw that they had a slightly different airfoil loaded up for the root part of the wing and the tip cord of the wing, rather than just using that default 2412. And we compared some numbers, and you can actually see that they changed quite a lot of numbers there, variables, things that you can, well, at least manipulate here in AirfoilMaker. And so I was wondering, where did they get the data from? Is there some kind of a table somewhere in some kind of other fancy manual of the 172 that we can refer to? But gradually, while we were searching, I couldn't find anything. So that already dawned at me that it perhaps was just about doing test flights and just putting in those numbers based off what I see in X-Plane when I fly my Skyhawk. And if I understand you correctly, that's indeed how they came to those numbers. Is just flying the damn thing and just manipulating those numbers there? Or is there some kind of a booklet or manual somewhere that does describe the exact numbers here, all of these coefficients for the different stations of the wing of the Skyhawk?
Yeah, there's two resources here. One, I just put a link in chat. It's called the Incomplete Guide to Airfoils, and literally has a link of every airfoil ever made. And well, you can
Familiar.
see
Looks
there.
familiar.
You familiar? Yeah. And then the other one's airfoil tools. Have you seen that?
Yeah, too, but those were just basic. That's just showing characteristics of that basic generic airfoil. And what I'm noticing with the default 172 is that they've taken that 2412 airfoil, but then changed it up so it more closely fits with the Skyhawk. At least that's how I interpreted it. I don't know if that's true, but so I
Yeah.
can find a lot of data on the 2412, but apparently for the Skyhawk, it seems more aircraft specific, or they changed or modified some characteristics of the airfoil to make it more fitting for the Sky 172. And that's what when I thought, well, is there some table that says, well, we've used 2412, but we modify these and these and these numbers, and so I can just copy paste those into AirPlayMaker, and I'm happy. But apparently that's not that easy.
No, I don't think so. I don't know how they've done it. Airfoil Labs is super duper fancy. They make commercial level products in under another business name, and they might use MATLAB or they might use a whole bunch of other things to get those numbers a little bit better.
All right.
But they still but I still think they're going to come back to putting the plane in into X-plane, flying it, and making it fly properly. Because again, X-plane
Yeah,
is
Roger.
not perfect.
Yeah.
You've
That's an important one. That's an important one. Yeah. So even though you have a table from some manual, authorized, blah, 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 even if you put those numbers in, then it could still be that X-plane doesn't show the same kind of flight behavior that you would like it to show because you're just a student pilot and like to. Yeah, that's an important one. Yeah, so that's still, it's leading. Yeah, ultimately it is just about how does the thing fly in X-plane. And you can use some objectivity first to get the main numbers right. And then there's some subjectivity where you can tweak things and make it, well, optimize it. Right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's a great starting point. Okay. This is going to be interesting, Rush. Cool. So if that's okay, I would just follow up on your advice here. Still need some stuff to do before we can even go airborne. And I would really love to invite you another time on the stream to ask you some more advanced or follow-up questions on this stuff. Perhaps you can even review our test flights to see, hey, I'm going to make some notes based off of what you're suggesting while I'm doing my stalls and stuff. And that might, well, suggest to me that there's something wrong with the wings or whatever. But I'm also curious to see how you would interpret that data or those results and say, well, I think it's about this, that, and this. To more, to increase my learning curve there. Perhaps that's a nice addition. Perhaps later on. I know that you're tight on time, but I just love to pick your brain here. It's such a niche almost. It's interesting. Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining in on the Discord, Rush. Much appreciated. Hope you're doing well with your real world aircraft, man. You're the proper engineer in the sim community. How is it going?
Just pretend. It's going okay.
No, you're not pretending.
The vertical stab is all finished now. So the horizontal, vertical stab is done. The rudder's the next thing to get started. So.
Awesome. So for anyone who who is unaware of AeroSimGaming, you'll be living in some kind of cave if you haven't heard of him. Go to AeroSimGaming and have a look at what the guy is doing. Obviously, he's also been doing test flights with aircrafts in X-plane. That's why I also invite him in here on the stream to learn from. But he's also actually making a real-world aircraft on its own, in its own hangar. Man, if somewhere I would have some kind of, I'm working as a researcher at the university, and sometimes conferences are in the US or in Canada or somewhere. I'm going to pick a conference near where your hangar is, so I can just make a short trip just to visit. That would be really awesome, man. Really awesome job you're doing. Keep up the good work, Rush. It's really inspirational.
Thanks, man.
So once more, thank you, and we'll just do some closing off here on the stream, and then we'll say goodbyes and stream some other time, and get starting with a test pilot kind of thing of optimizing my Skyhawk. Man, it sounds challenging and fun at the same time. Steep learning curve, Rush. Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks again, and talk to you later.
No problem, catcher. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Alrighty, so that was our dear Rush. Awesome, guys. Isn't that cool? That's the flight sim community. Not that Rush and me represent the entire flight sim community, but this is what I love about, also Mrs. Uncertified loves about the community, is just help and support and encouragement. It's really cool. So, again, to wrap things up, there probably is no table with specific information about the airfoil for the Skyhawk 172, Laminar, or Airfoil Labs. Apparently Airfoil Labs is quite sophisticated in its wing airfoil kind of calculations. If I loaded up Airfoil Labs' Cessna 172 in PlaneMaker, it actually looks quite off of the sketches that we have. So I'm actually a bit surprised, let alone that the Airfoil Labs use slats at the leading edge of the wings and huge wing flap chord sizes. But perhaps they're doing that because that's an important point of what we're just saying. Even though you got the objective numbers of how the Skyhawk should behave, or what the wingspan or the wing twist or whatever it may be, what is actually like in the real world, the ultimate goal is obviously to make it fly in X-plane like it's like it's realistic and as it would be in the real world. So, and that could be that we should perhaps tweak some things in PlaneMaker or in AirfoilMaker that makes the airfoil or the particular flight model looking different from what it actually is, but doing so in order to make it fly more realistic in X-Plane. That's an important thing, so that at least in my mind, I should not fixate so much on finding the right numbers. I should still use those obviously as a baseline, but then the subjectivity comes in. That's a really good, great pointer that I'm going to follow up. Still though, if I look at PlaneMaker, for those who haven't seen it yet, I'm so proud of this thing. It's looking great. Some silly things that we added on, for example, the pitot tube, which has negligible effect on how the airplane flies. Perhaps we should even remove it because it just draws on FPS, or I don't know. I just love to model it anyways. This thing is not able to fly yet, even though I like to do test flights. So also we need to give the proper particular airfoil. We just also need to put in all kinds of other numbers in to just make the engine work, and all kinds of other stuff. So that's up first, and then once we have something that seems to approach a good kind of Skyhawk that is flyable in X-Plane, then we're going to load it up, and then we're going to follow that scheme to getting those numbers right. Oh man, I'm really excited. I hope you are as well, guys. Okay, so greatly past my time here. I think I will be late on my next meeting, most likely. But I don't care. I could have chatted with Rush all day, I think. So let's close it off. Let me see. I will put this away. This is saved. Yeah, so I will stop my search for those tables. That's good to know. Otherwise, we would have been searching for many streams, which is a waste of time. AirfoilMaker, main wings, and Rush. Well, Rush indeed. What did I plan for my next episodes? Yeah, so that was all the airfoil stuff, vertical stabilizer, airfoil, blah, 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 blah. I think we should actually postpone that then. And for the next episode, work on making the thing flyable. So that means the engine, all of that stuff, the nose wheel needs to be able to steer, and yeah, so I need to further outline all of these subtasks here, but make the plane flyable. So we can do our test flights, and then the airfoil thingy comes into play. I'm also quite curious to learn about that application that Rush is using, but I think for the sake of transparency, I'm going to stick to AirfoilMaker. Or I need to reconsider there, because I still love to make a Skyhawk that is realistic ultimately, but it's realistic not in the sense of the exact same airfoil, but it needs to fly in X-Plane like it is a Cessna 172. So I need to think a little bit more of that, because I think it's really nice about this video series is also show you how to do this. And when there's some blank in between where I do something in another application, but also as Rush already explained, that thing is quite sophisticated. So I guess even though I wanted to, I think I'm going to gaze at that application and think, yeah, that's interesting, but this is too much. It's interesting though, but too much for me to also include in my curve here. It's already quite steep. And we might do that perhaps in some later episodes when I like to improve on that airfoil. But it's great to know what tools the guys are using for making their awesome airplanes. I was also referring to the Super Cup, for those who don't know. That's a product that Rush offers also in collaboration with SimCoders. Super Cup, a really great looking airplane. I have it too. Really great flight performance and stuff. It's also looks really pretty. So any guide or any pointers I could get from that team, from Rush and his friends, is helpful. And I know that stuff leads to quality aircraft. So yeah. Anyways, Jim, stay for another hour. You know you want to. Yeah, well, at least even a couple of more hours. But no, I have to call my friend soon to say that I'm a bit later. But I enjoyed myself, guys. My gosh, this is so exciting. Having said that, let's close it off then, because I really need to get going. Click. No, that's not a good click. That click. Yeah. So that completes this current episode. Did a lot of searching and stuff. Introduced ourselves, familiarized with AirfoilMaker. That's great. And we know that we should actually skip AirfoilMaker for now and first work on making our Skyhawk flyable. Cannot wait to fly it. That would also take several episodes, I guess. And then we're going to do some test flights and go back to AirfoilMaker to perhaps do some modifications, optimizations, and that might be the way to go about it. So I really appreciate that help. Again, Rush, thank you for dropping by. Really appreciate that support. I know that he doesn't have that much time, so I'm very grateful that he offers his help. Guys, thank you so much for dropping by. Rush, again, thanks. See ya. Microsoft, well, there are many of you. SN, Miniwebs, obviously. Tawi, thank you also. Good to see you for such a, it's been a while, so good to see you again here on the stream. And hoping to see you very, very soon. Tomorrow's going to be a family day. I'm away. So I think I'm going to stream Monday or Tuesday. Now, guys, as always, happy flights.